Good morning. We'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. Today is Thursday, October 27th. We're here for our, what we'll call a strategic planning meeting. Got a lot of good things going on in Oconee County based on the success of our previous strategic plans. So we're just kind of looking for a little direction from the board and talk about the processes going forward. So with that, we'll let Justin start us off.
Good morning, commissioners. I just want to say on the front end, this room is not really well set up for this kind of meeting. I'd look for a little more informal discussion with you guys, but these are the things that the staff that we're envisioning as what I call our big projects, big initiatives over the next 5 years or so. And so I think what we're looking for is a kind of iterative discussion today. Just let us know, are we on the right track? No, don't do that. Oh, I want to do something else. Before we start heading down. But and then one of the other things too is all the documents that you have in front of you, we're going to put on our website so that the public can view them also. A lot of these are concept plans, master plans, and different strategic directions. So the way we're going to handle today's meeting is I'll have different directors come up and sort of introduce some of the plans, some of the initiatives they have a discussion, and then we'll look for your feedback and commentary as we go forward. If you have any questions, again, please ask as they go along. This is for discussion, and if things pop up or you think of things afterwards, please let us know. So on the front end, Lisa is going to come introduce the parks master plan, including our existing parks, and then sort of the future direction process for our LAS site.
Good morning. So for Parks and Recreation, just kind of looking at our 5 years from today, what we're looking to do. And at Oconee Veterans Park, we'll start there. There are a couple of things that are still left in the master plan for that park, which started back in 2004. The major amenity that has not been added yet to that park are the additional tennis courts. So you'll see that we've got on here on the map, there's additional tennis courts placed here and here, as well as right there is like a restroom facility, along with the added parking to accommodate those additional courts. Again, that was back in 2004. It was one of the priorities in SPLOST 2015. It just was not funded at that point in time. We at that point, we added these 3 multi-use fields with that SPLOST 2015. That is still, those courts are still something that are used heavily by the community. It is still something that we would like to see. It is the top priority right now for our SPLOST 2021. The other thing in the master plan for Oconee Veterans Park that has not been done is right near the quad baseball, softball fields is a large pavilion. That is still something that is on the plan for us to hopefully add to that park. But lastly, the third thing that you'll see on this updated master plan for Veterans Park is an additional entrance exit into Parkside. That is something that has been designed, concept designed already at this point, but that would go from the multi-use fields parking lot and go out into the Parkside development. But those are the 3 main things, the 3 priorities for Oconee Veterans Park. And I can entertain questions now or at the end, whatever you prefer. The next thing that I'll go ahead and talk about is Herman C. Michael Park, and that is right here. The only thing that you'll note at change really in the Herman C. Michael Park plan is the conversion of the current tennis courts into outdoor pickleball courts. So the courts behind the gymnasium right here currently they can easily accommodate at 8 pickleball courts. And then, as you all know, we already have 2 outdoor pickleball courts and 2 junior tennis courts. Those 2 junior tennis courts as well would be converted to outdoor pickleball courts. That would give us 12 outdoor courts, 8 of which would be lit courts. The only other thing that you'll note on the Herman C. Michael Park plan is some improvements to the parking lot in this area, as well as adding a little additional parking over here by the courts, pavilion, and a turnaround point. Other than that, Herman C. Michael Park is pretty much built out at this point. Bogart Sports Complex, at this point in time, in the near future, there is no additional large plans for that park. The only thing that you'll note on this plan, as well as Herman C. Michael Park, is some parking improvements at some point in the near future, whether that be in the next 5 years or down the road. As y'all know, that is a gravel parking lot. So at some point in time, there's potential to pave that and kind of organize that parking. Heritage Park, which is to your furthest right. This map is basically just showing you the trail system there, which is really the most heavily used out at that park. It's very difficult to note, but the numbers of patrons that utilize those trails, but it is a significant number of people utilizing the mountain bike trails, as well as the horse trails, as well as just some hikers that go out to that park. It is a beautiful park, but there is no major plans in the near future for that park, other than just some general maintenance, repairs, and some updates to those things. The next one is the Middle Oconee River. That park, in the future, it will have about 32 acres of passive park area. So it's primarily just a passive park. You'll just note on this plan just some small parking areas, picnic areas, some hiking trails along the river walk, not really a river walk, but along the river, some trails, and a potential launch area for like a kayak canoes. So that's basically what you see. You can see it's just right here. You've got some parking, you've got some trail systems along in the white, and a potential launch pad right in here. So lastly, what I have is the LAS site that we have with potentially 220 park acres. This concept for hopefully our new future park is really based on what we have received in terms of community feedback in the parks, our staff, as well as our user groups, and just in general through our Recreation Advisory Committee on some things that we need. The primary things that you'll see on this plan is the addition of some multi-use fields. So there's multi-use fields in this lower section as well as in this upper section, with soccer being our largest program. We do need additional soccer fields, but we also need tackle and flag football fields. We also need lacrosse fields, as all those programs are utilizing not only our parks, but also the school system facilities. The other thing that of note that we do need in our park system, and that is some more indoor gymnasium space. So both of these are indoor gymnasiums. Each one of those could house 4 regulation size basketball courts. Right here, and I'll just go ahead and note that basically what we're looking, because we've got right here a potential artificial turf field, stadium type field. That's just the one that's right here, along with a track, which track is actually a pretty up and coming sport in our community in terms of the middle schools have programs now. So there's a lot of younger people that are looking to get involved in that. These are the main things that you're going to see in this park, though, is your multi-use fields, your gymnasiums. This is just some picnic areas, a potential dog park. And one of the big things that we receive a lot in the park system is more trails, more places to walk and or bike safely. So you'll note along here, there's walking as well as some biking trails. So you're walking paved asphalt trails, as well as probably some dirt biking trails that go along in these wooded areas. And that is one of the top things that we do receive feedback on. And a reason why so many people enjoy Veterans Park is because of that walking path. make sure that anybody have any questions so far on this one.
I got one. Just how many courts, basketball courts do we use with the school system?
We typically use about 7 school basketball courts. It can range from 6 to 7, and it really, a lot of times it's dependent on when we can get into that gymnasium. So, we're using the Oconee County High School auxiliary gym for older ages because those typically aren't available till 7 or 7:30. We use Colin Ferry. Those are the two in both the middle school gyms. Again, most of those gyms, with the exception of Colin Ferry, are not available till 6:30 or 7 o'clock, which doesn't allow us to utilize them for the younger age groups. We do use the elementary schools though. We have the Colin Ferry, we have High Shoals, Rocky Branch, Dove Creek, and Malcolm Bridge Elementary School. So, but we are in those school systems because of the way we program between the youth programs, our high school intramural programs, and the adult programs. We're typically in those gyms 6 days a week. And some of them will vary which days depending on the age groups that are in there. But we run basketball minimum 6 days a week, with Fridays kind of being our makeup or odd league days.
Yeah, okay. With what we have,
Mhm.
which were the 3 courts.
Well, we have 2 regulation courts. And so both of them can go for the smaller age groups. We can run them sideways. So for the youngest age groups, we have a max of 4 courts in the park system.
So we would need what we have. Those would be critical.
Yes, with us using at least of the 4 to 5 elementary schools, that young age group starting at 6 o'clock, you're looking at needing a minimum of like 5 to 6 of those cross courts, those smaller courts. So that's at least 3 regulation size courts. That's only for the youngest age group.
You're talking about
In order.
regulation court, but with 2 groups of kids that want in each.
So on the regulation courts, we'll run them side along the court. So we can get 2 of the youngest age groups. So you're like 7 and under. We can get 2 of those courts on one regulation basketball court. So that one court would have 2 small courts plus the larger court that we then converge, over after they're done playing for the older age groups.
Okay, and the other one, would we be able to convert this to volleyball?
Yes. Yeah, well, there's quick ways to do it, and then there's slow ways to do it, right? So there's the manual way to do it, which takes a good bit more time, especially with the volleyball standards. And then they have automated systems now. They will just bring them down from the ceiling. That you just switch a button, and basketball goals go up. You can hit another button, the volleyball standards go down. So that can be done.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, it can be done.
Because girls volleyball is, as I look at it, is getting bigger.
Yeah, and we currently only offer like a recreational program, primarily instructional. We're getting more and more requests for more league play in that middle school, late elementary age. So that is something that could grow for sure.
What I heard, Lisa, is these 2 courts, these buildings here for basketball won't get us out totally out of the school system.
That is correct. Well, if we had both of them, we'd be pretty close. If we just have one of them, we will not be out of school systems. But what it does is it definitely allows us to get those younger ages, even like the 10 and unders, in at an earlier time. It gives us a lot more ability to do that and at least get out of the elementary schools are very difficult for us to program in because, as Commissioner Horton has mentioned, with the little ones, you've got parents, grandparents, siblings all coming to those games, and there is no place to sit. If you've ever gone to one of those youth games, they're like lining up against the wall. So having that ability where you've got room to accommodate those parents and those coming to the games would be a significant improvement.
I think any design now has to include family and
Mhm.
aunts and uncles and grandmothers.
Mhm.
Has to include those. They're all coming for sure.
Yeah, we have a very involved community in a good way. Yes.
Let me ask you this. how much, or how does the school system charge us? How do they come up with a figure?
So we are currently in the third year of a 3-year agreement, joint use agreement with Oconee County School Systems. That will go through June 30th of 2023. And we are paying right now 60% of their fee. So the fee that they have publicized on their website, we pay 60% of that fee. For instance, currently for tackle football, so we've got games at Oconee County High School this Saturday. We pay for the field per hour. We pay a custodian per hour. We'll pay for a scoreboard fee. If those games were to go late, we would also pay a field light fee. And there's a sound system fee too. So that one's a little bit, that one has several fees that go along with that. For basketball, we typically pay the gym fee and perhaps the scoreboard fee, depending on the gym. Some of the gyms don't have scoreboards. So, but yeah, we are paying, we started, this is, as I said, we're going into our third season, or not third season, third year. So our third fall season and third winter season paying those fees.
What's it, somebody asked, the total amount?
I look back at Melissa to say, I did not bring that with me. We do have, I usually have them done by season, and it's a good chunk of change. I'm talking like $30,000 to $40,000, depending on the season. But I'd be more than happy to get that because we do have that available.
So what are we're charging per kid. So what are we charging? 20?
Depends on the program. So football's higher, obviously, because there's more expenses with those rental fees. Whereas like soccer, we're not in as many soccer fields. So that's like a $5 parent fee because not all the teams are at the school facility. So it kind of varies by program depending on how much school use. Basketball is another one that's a little bit higher. So, and we have recalculated our fees each year in the last 3 years to accommodate that school use fee.
Let me ask you this one. Especially with basketball and football, I'll stick with those two. Do the high school coaches or middle school coaches have anything to do with it?
I think it depends on the school. Different coaches are more involved at the youth level than others. Some are very involved. Some of us want them in their facility.
So those children that are playing football are generally going to the 2 middle schools.
Yeah. So our tackle football, our flag football, we're utilizing our own park facilities. But for tackle football, the league that we participate in, it requires them to show where they attend school, where they live. All those kids that are in, they will be designated as a Oconee County High School or North Oconee High School. And we have 2 teams in each grade. So those 7U, we have an Oconee, we have a North Oconee. Their home team they'll play at North Oconee High School for their home games.
And that's been happening a while.
That has been happening for a while. So all those children are currently from where they live are slated to go to that high school.
Okay.
And our basketball program, depending on how large the league is, we have started splitting them north and south as well.
So they benefit by what we're doing, but they charge us for their benefit.
They do charge us to use their facility.
And so that's the point I'm making, that school system made a decision to charge us, even though those children are going to be participating in that particular sport at the high school. Okay, that's all I need.
One thing that I haven't noted on the LAS site is that basically, as y'all can see, with 220 acres, that is a large park facility, is that we potentially in building this or thinking of building this in phases. So this lower section, which could include one of our basketball facilities as well as the lower fields, is what priority wise would be a phase 1. And that, of course, depending on funding on how many of those fields and our gymnasium would be included in that phase 1. But this is what we're looking at right here. including the infrastructure to start with phase one. Of course, all this would be, once reviewed by you, would also go to our Recreation Advisory Committee to take a look at these upcoming plans, as well as receiving public input before you all would consider adoption of these plans.
But being honest, we're gonna be catching up no matter what, how long, because we're busting at the seams now. We're gonna be catching up for a while, right?
This is correct. We, yes, I understand from what I hear, we're at maybe perhaps a 2% or somewhere around there growth, but we are experiencing much higher growth in the Parks and Recreation programs. So tackle football went up 26%, flag went up 18%, cheer went up like we are experiencing a lot, much higher growth in our programs.
Let me ask you one thing. I know we don't charge the school system. Did they use our fields for any kind of tournaments?
Typically right now they are primarily Oconee County Middle School, Malcolm Bridge Middle School are utilizing the softball fields at the OVP quad for their seasons. The middle school will sometimes have a tournament there. We have occasionally hosted a high school softball tournament as well. Those are the primary users other than your FFA and some random day things with PE classes and whatnot that we accommodate.
When is your next recreational affairs committee?
So our next meeting is November 15th. The one thing that is not, we haven't got to yet, our number 3 on here, besides the plan finalization process and our priorities, is the trail master plan. So we currently have the Northeast Georgia Regional Commission working on a countywide trail master plan. Some of those priorities you all have already discussed in terms of things that are currently in the works with design concept plans with the kind of Butler's Crossing to 441, where there's a multi-use trail plan there, as well as some of the sidewalks that have been done in the fairly recent past. So this would kind of give us an overall scope of some priorities to hit, pending some potential funding with that. If T-SPLOS was passed, I think there was about 3 million designated to potential trails, multi-use paths, those type things. So we are in that process. We do have someone from Northeast Georgia Regional Commission coming to the next RAC meeting on November 15th to discuss the trails and that process as well. But the other thing that has been mentioned in terms of the trails is some connectivity as well, just from the high schools through the parks, with 53 being such a kind of thoroughfare between hitting 2 and with the LAS site being right off 53, potentially 3 parks, as well as both the high schools having some kind of connectivity there in the future.
On a smaller item, I got a question for you. Has there been any complaints about the lighting on the field on Herman C as far as the little field there when they're practicing football and playing soccer? Because it seems to me when I go by there, it's really dark.
Yeah,
But the lights are on.
Yes, Commissioner Saxon, you're referring to Field 4 at Herman C. Michael Park. There have been complaints on that field since I started back in 2004 because there are only 2 pole lights on that field. Typically on a field, you're going to have lights coming from both sides of that field, and there's only 2. Before I worked here, I used to ref soccer games there, and you couldn't see the lines when it starts to get dark, so it made that kind of difficult. And yes, that is.
Is that the only place we need the lighting?
Right. Well,
new facility's gonna get lighting. I know that.
Yeah, we are probably at a point at some point in the fairly near future to start discussing field light replacements. Probably, of course, moving toward your LED lights, but Herman C. Michael Park lights, they're pretty close to their lifespan at this point. Bogart would be following that as well. And then, of course, OVP, they're already 14. They've been installed at least 15 years now since those were initially installed. So that will be something that we will have to tackle.
Yeah, when I go by there, I definitely see that feeling.
It is. it
And-
can
and
be
don't
very
get me
dark,
wrong, it
especially on the
seems like
53
something we can
light.
address pretty quick on that.
We actually we are spending a good bit of more money on field light repairs each year. So Bogart, Herman C, we spent well over $10,000 last year just on field light repairs. So that is something that we'll want to address. And that would also help us to address areas that we know it need additional lighting. We'd also like to convert the outdoor basketball courts to LEDs. Those are old lights as well. So we've been having some issues with those, even after repair, failing again. So that'll be a nice big project for us.
Well, I mean, you can see lighting in the new lighting at the middle school, Oconee Middle School. I mean, that lighting is so small compared to bank lights now that we still have. So
Yeah, so they are so much more spill proof and yet brighter and more cost efficient. Be glad to entertain any additional questions. But again, these are our major things is the OVP tennis courts being our top priority. And then at that point, after that, the conversion to Herman C tennis into pickleball courts and the LAS site, those are really our top interest at this point.
I got a question for you. Let's go back to Heritage Park just for a second. There's been several in the community that's talking about the horse use there. Can you address any upgrades that you might be doing in the future for that?
Well, so I have been going back and forth with one of the horse communities kind of representative, and we are supposed to be meeting and actually doing kind of an off-site visit at a couple of the different horse park areas and around Walton County area, probably I think at the beginning of December. They have given kind of a preliminary draft of some things that they're interested in. This group is also interested in raising funds to help make some improvements that would make the arena and that facility more horse friendly. So because right now it's built primarily for a lot of your agriculture, your FFA shows. So your livestock, cattle, sheep, those kind of things. We're able to accommodate pretty well with that. Horse have a little bit different footing and fencing and things that have to happen, warm up arenas, those type things. So we're kind of trying to work there with what they're looking for interest wise, kind of seeing what it is. I told her I want to get my eyes on it. Show me what it is that you're looking for, what you think is potentially something we could do at Heritage Park. And as y'all, I believe y'all are all aware at this point, we do now have an Oconee Park Foundation. It is a 501(c)(3) foundation. They were at our trick or treat event last night promoting themselves. They are interested in helping kind of channel anybody's maybe that has a special interest group that wants to see some improvements, new amenities, those type things in the park system, helping to raise those funds as well to assist us. So that is another avenue in which the horse community can utilize. I don't have a finalized plan yet exactly on what they want, but I am working with them in the last couple of months. And like I said, I'm meeting with them in early December again.
Thank you.
So kind of what we're looking for today or over the next couple of weeks is just any comments y'all have on the master plans. If there's something you're seeing or you've heard from the community that might need to be added in there or looked at, let's communicate that back through. I would think at your next Recreational Affairs Committee, we could present these initial drafts maybe, and then their next meeting, take comments back from that group. Once they feel comfortable with it, we'll go to community for engagement about community acceptance of it. And then hopefully sometime by the end of the first quarter or in the second quarter next year, we'll get the finals back and actually go to adoption as a board, taking that on. And that'll help us in our funding and getting ready for the next SPLOST as well. Yes, sir.
On the financing of the LAS park, is that pay as you go?
Yes, we'll talk a little bit more about the financing part of it as we kind of work through the agenda and get to the finances. We have a couple ideas out there about that. But we are trying to figure that out.
But mainly through sales tax. That's what we're talking about.
Yes.
The other thing is the multi-use paths that we're promoting in T-Spot. Will they follow the right of way of the existing roads?
That's our goal. So especially on the Hog Mountain Road, since a lot of that was owned by the federal government and was transferred to UGA, we can't get outside of that existing easement. So we're gonna do everything in our power to stay within the existing right of ways.
But most of these will follow, right?
Yes,
We're not gonna take off through the middle of.
not unless somebody came up and said, I want a path right through the middle of my property, then we would entertain it then. Yeah.
All right. Thank
Right. Very good. Thank you.
All right, so the next topic, bring up newly appointed acting director Adam Layfield for Water Resources to discuss water master plan, sewer master plan, and some of our prioritization and funding strategies.
Lisa's a little short, so I'm gonna check this thing out here. Good morning, Commissioners. Good to see y'all. Well, firstly, I'd like to introduce or welcome Mr. Jimmy Parker here. He's from PPI. This firm's historical knowledge of our system is irreplaceable, so he's going to be available to field some questions if necessary. Hopefully, I can handle it though. First, we'll discuss map 1 in your packet there. And I know Justin he'll elaborate a little bit on this, but this is our service area map. At the present, you can see the green area are areas with water and wastewater service. The blue area is just for water services only. I'm not, it's my impression we don't plan on expanding any further south as far as the water goes. But Justin, would you like to elaborate on that service map?
Well, it's just a general commentary. This is more of a growth management and land use narrative than it is a water and sewer, but what makes Oconee unique and what I would call a managed growth is really illustrated by this map. You see the water and sewer service area, and you see the portion of the county where there's none available and none planned. That speaks to sort of the, what's the future of Oconee look like? It looks very much like was envisioned decades and decades and decades ago. I'll say Gwinnett County has right now about 56 million gallons a day of treatment on average. They're able to go up to 98 million in their 3 plants. We're currently funding up to 3 million a day. So there's a huge difference between those two jurisdictions, what I would call a metro Atlanta suburban community versus Oconee County and its rural growth management plan now. So I think it's just a good illustration of how Oconee County has strategically applied its infrastructure and to achieve sort of what we want from a growth strategy.
Any questions for the service area? All right, I'm gonna jump into our water strategic plan now. Before I get too much into the map, that's going to be map 3, I do believe. I would like to note 2 of our, what I'm going to call our top dog projects is going to be the Bear Creek expansion from 21 MGD to 42 MGD. This is projected to cost about, to my knowledge right now, about 10 mil. And then another one is going to be the construction of the Hard Labor Creek water treatment facility in Walton County. And this is going to be a 16 MGD thing. So before I get too much into the map, I want to at least hit those 2 projects. Right now, I'm pretty sure both of these projects are, and John and Melissa could probably answer it a little bit better, but I'm pretty sure these are going to be bonded projects. All right, and I'll get into the map. Do y'all have any questions about that? I'll get into the maps now, and I'm going to explain to you what you're looking at before we get too much in depth. You'll see the big thick blue lines. These are divisions for our pressure zones. The Dove Creek pressure zone is up here. You got your Dove Creek tank and your booster pump station. The middle, the 974 pressure zone, that's your two Mars Hill tanks. And then you'll see the far right, I guess, or east is a 920. This right here is going to be our third pressure zone. It's our Watkinsville pressure zone. We got two more tanks and 5 PRVs. As far as priority projects are concerned, you'll see it at the bottom of your map. It's listed as water system project priority list. The funding or the cost or projected cost for construction is also listed there. Right now, our top priority is going to be the State Route 15 water main extension. This is going to be the phase 2 part. We've already completed phase 1. This will go from the Valero station or right there to city limit sign or close to the city limit sign of Watkinsville all the way to the railroad tracks up there at Moore Street and McCree Street. The third phase of that, which is our second priority, would be to go through to Watkinsville, across the light right there at where W's Pizza is and all the way down back toward the admin building. This would serve us well to do, more so because that the Watkinsville water line is our oldest system, or it's our oldest pipe. This is a lot of cast, and you're gonna also got a lot of tuberculation within these systems, and it's also small. So if we can upgrade this system in the future, that's gonna serve us pretty well. The third,
Stop right. You said something about the admin building. What was that?
that's where the phase 3 of this plan for State Route 15. It's going to go that direction. It's not going to necessarily connect. I'm just trying to give you some landmarks that you would know to where
Okay.
these things are going to be placed.
All right, is it, there's nothing about this heavy red line?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, our third top project is going to be Flat Rock Road water extension, and most of these projects, these red lines you see on here, are really going to be water quality projects to where we can just loop our system and keep our water cleaner, and be able to flush if we need to, and keep people in service if there is a leak. So we have 2 feeds.
That's more water quality project there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There's not been very many major changes from our past strategic plans, but most of our growth is going to be on our sewer side than it will our water. Any questions regarding the water? All right. Map 2.
Back to
Okay.
Bear Creek with that high rate and the pumps and stuff out there. What does that mean in gallons per day for us? Just so everybody knows.
I think what it was, just from my knowledge of it, we were going to go from, we're like at 4 MGD. That's our allocation now. If we were just to do the high rate, it would give us about a 1.5 million gallon per day addition just to the filters. But the Upper Oconee Water Authority or Upper Oconee Basin Water Authority did agree, just because the growth through all the municipalities, it would make sense to actually add another treatment train and expand the plant.
So we're basically double. We'll go from 4 to right at 8.
Just so everybody
Yeah.
knows that.
And we also have an additional 1.5 million gallons per day that we lease from Barrow County.
That puts us in pretty good shape for a good while.
Yes, sir. And then then you got the big dog over there at Hard Labor Creek. So that's another water option. Our board back in the past had really good foresight getting involved in that. So as far as water is concerned, we should be set.
Thank you, sir.
Got one question on your just overall expansion. I noticed most of the water mains are expansion, like in Watkinsville, are all 12s. and then you move further west, may vary from 8 to 10. Is that based on usage or is that based on projected growth?
I'm gonna let Jimmy field this one just for the fact that he did the strategic map for us and then, his knowledge of the system.
Most of that was based on the hydraulic model. If you'll notice on Snow's Mill Road, that's a projected 24-inch main. Cold Springs is 16-inch. That will essentially be your Hard Lever Creek feed at the time at which y'all connect to that facility. Everything else, Ray's Church Road, High Shoals Road, I think those are all 10 and 12-inch. Really only place we're projecting 8 inches are in your more rural areas or residential areas.
Ridgeway Road's the one that had the
Yeah.
8.
Yeah, and it's a short little.
And it's a dead end. It's not a
Yes,
loop.
it's basically getting rid of a dead end out Morris Ford.
Mhm. Okay.
And then the other loop that Adam mentioned, that the important one for water quality, that you've got a long line out Barnett Shoals and out Cree's Mill. It's a dead end. That's where flat rock would make a big difference in your water quality and THM monitoring that you're required to do for the state.
Thank you, Jimmy.
I guess moving forward, because of ductile being such a big issue as far as supply chain now. As far as the size of the pipe, would we look at what's available at that point, or like a 10 versus a 12? It's not going to be a lot. It will not be any more labor to put in a 12 versus a 10. And if the cost is very similar, would we consider a 12 versus a 10?
There is discretion within our specifications for the water resources to take that on a case by case basis and then do that if need be. So if we have a tremendous shortage, which I know guys kind of where we're at in ductile, and you can only get certain sizes, and within your water main extension permit, we require you model the system that you're going to be putting in there. If we see that it's actually not going to overload our system, or if it actually works, then yes, that's something we would be open to.
Thank
you. Any more water questions? All right, let's jump into the wastewater map. This is our strategic wastewater plan. It's map number 2. It's my understanding, or the department's understanding, the vision of the BOC. The 3 main goals here is to decommission the LAS, decommission pump stations strategically as we can due to ongoing maintenance and power bills and more potential for a spill, and to explore reuse options for park irrigation and any kind of future development that could implement a reuse system. I'm going to explain this map legend because I know looking at this thing is it's pretty crowded. It's a great map though. I know y'all are looking at it in a smaller level. It's going to be this map over here. Looking at your reuse, I'd like to note that the highlighted portion in yellow, it's a pink line that's highlighted in yellow. That's existing force main that can be utilized as a reuse system. The stuff that's pink and dashed and not highlighted yellow is stuff that we would have to construct. Circled triangle, the green triangle, those are firstly the triangles are going to be lift stations. The circled ones are ones that need upgraded, and the red ones, the actual red triangles are lift stations that we plan on decommissioning in the future. So if y'all have any questions about the legend, I know it can be, I know it's a little tight right there with that small to see it, but is there anything y'all need to explain to y'all before we get too much further into the map? All right. So first, I'm gonna just jump into our priority projects, which are listed at the bottom of your map. The Epps Bridge pump station upgrade is a major need for the department and for the county. this is what I refer to as the Grand Central Station of lift stations that we maintain. We have about 13 lift stations that drain into this basin. So that's not only the growth that's occurring right there among or along the Epps Bridge corridor, but it's also the growth that happens out on 78. So any future growth that comes out or goes down the 78 corridor is going to end up flowing into this lift station. So that is our top priority, is to get this thing upgraded from a 4 million gallons per day to a 1.25 million gallons per day. And that is actually in the works now. We're starting to acquire easements as we speak. The McNutt Creek Connector Phase 3 is going to be our second priority. Let's see if I can actually find it in here. All right. Yeah. This will be the one going through the Oconee tract. This will eliminate the 316 lift station. And it also, right, it's hard to, yeah, I probably need a pointer like Lisa had. If you look, and you can't really see, but thank you. There we go. So with the construction of the phase 3 of the McNutt Creek, we would eliminate the 316 lift station, and we would rely more on this gravity feed right here. Some other possibilities we could do is this line right here, this green line, is a line we've just recently had to coat or put lining on due to some issues with tuberculation and things. So this line is actually under a heavy load. So one thing we can do, if we do if we build this McNutt Creek Phase 3 sewer, is we could take Franklin Grove. Or no, sorry, that's not Franklin Grove. What is that? Yeah, it is Franklin Grove. I'm sorry. We can take Franklin Grove and turn and have the force main, which the force main is already flowing this way, but we can actually turn this force main from where it's flowing. It'd be flowing northwest instead of southeast, and we can have it go in this gravity line. And it would take a pretty big load off of this. So that's another future upgrade we can do. Now McNutt Creek Sewer Connector Phase 4 is going to be located right here. That would decommission our cobblestone lift station, and also an important thing to note in the future is if we develop along the 15 corridor, this lift station is too small to handle too much more development right here. So that's why this gravity line would be pretty vital for any major future development on the Highway 78 corridor. A few other things I'd like to note just to explain some things that have been added to our strategic plan since the last time y'all probably looked at this. We've added the Dowdy Road decommissioning of this lift station, which this would be we have a lot of growth in this area. So it's a good, as far as development goes, it'd be a good candidate for decommissioning and turning into gravity, but this would also eliminate a pretty major source of inflow and infiltration within our system. Something else we've added is the Oconee County, or the Oconee Veterans Park line, which is we have a upgrade that has to happen right here at the Oconee Veterans Park lift station. This force main goes from Oconee Veterans Park all the way through Parkside, and it connects to the Barber Creek line that was just recently constructed. This is necessary for the fact that to be able to handle westland flows on the western side of the county, we would need to construct this, and the reason why we have to handle the westland flows would be to decommission the LES, because that's really the only thing that flows to the LES. Some other things that were added: the Cause Creek effluent force main to the middle of Oconee, which going down right down 441. This is necessary to get the additional 1.5 million gallons per day from our Calls Creek plant to the middle of Oconee for a discharge. And other things we've added is the Daniels Bridge upgrade, which this is actually a force main upgrade that's in progress right now. It's going to go from a 6 to a 10. This has to handle western flow as well. From to decommission LAS. And this is a vital line we have to have. As far as any additional things that we've added, those are the big key that I wanted to point out to you guys. But if y'all have any more questions, just I'm open to them.
So just commissioners in summation, we just wanted to point out that the grand strategy for the wastewater system has not been altered or changed significantly. There's no real new. And Adam listed out sort of the top major priorities outside of obviously the Calls Creek upgrade, the decommissioning of the LAS, and the move toward the gravity systems. But again, just back to the land use issue, this speaks to sort of holding the line and being strategic with how we place our infrastructure as the county builds up.
I just add to that, basically your whole sewer master plan, I mean, back in the 2000s, Oconee's sewer expansion was very reactionary. And I remember in the mid-90s, I came here in 98. Epps Bridge and Daniels Bridge were built for the CDBG grant to serve Home Depot. That was the first big thing to show up. Lo and behold, Epps Bridge exploded, and the rest of that growth was sort of reactionary through the 2000s. So basically, all of the improvements that Adams mentioned are just basically tying your infrastructure together for these gravity segments. So we decommission these pump stations, your system operates more efficiently, reliably, and I think that will continue. The Barber Creek corridor will be the next focus after these projects. I think it's pretty much, to sum it all up, is just connecting those missing segments in your system. Sort of making it a little more efficient operate.
Basically, to be more dependent upon a gravity line instead of force mains. I'll jump into, as far as funding goes, this will probably be more finance, but we do have an R&E fund that the department utilizes. Typically, we stick about 800,000 a year in there for water and wastewater both. So it's 800,000 total for both. Of course, you'd have splosh and bonds and GFA loans as well, but I'm sure finance will probably get into that a little bit more in depth. But if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. Amber, come on. Nothing. Thanks, Commissioner. Appreciate it.
So again, the Upper Oconee Water Basin has applied for some ARP money, so hopefully we'll hear from that before the end of the year. And that'll kind of affect how the finances kind of flow. If we can get a good chunk of that money, that'll change things around. So just in general, if everybody's okay with the projects and how they're ranked, if you think of things up over the next few days, then just let us know. But the next step on this would be to kind of finalize once we hear from the ARP money, if we're going to get any additional there, then we can kind of finalize the financial part of it. And the goal would be to bring this back for board adoption of the plan sometime in the first quarter of next year. So by then we'll have should have all the answers on the money, and that may change some priorities as well. So
I do have, since you brought it up about finances, by doing away with Lee. With decommissioning or doing away with the pump stations or lift stations, whatever, and going to gravity, how much money does that save us per year? Like every one that's decommissioned? I think I know the answer, but I'd rather you say it.
You're looking at about 18,000 per year per station. That's just the average rule of thumb. I appreciate that.
Plus just for the potential for spills, you know,
Yeah, I know.
when we dropped that one on Rocky Branch, I think our count went
Yeah, I
cut in
remember,
half at least.
I remember back in
amount of
the
spill.
day when somebody, you couldn't put enough pumping stations in.
Mhm.
Yeah, the plan is to get away from that.
I know. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And really, the annual cost of operating is one thing, but when you gotta rebuild these things every how many years, that's the real. Well, I was thinking with all that stuff, you're getting closer to 50,000.
I can get some tighter numbers for you if you'd
No,
like.
that's
to.
good enough. I think folks need to know, you know, not just why we're doing it, but there's a major financial cost to having those stations. And then the spills, other kind of things that run up the tab.
Yes.
A lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
I like the questions. I appreciate it. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, he says he likes the questions now. We'll see.
The camera's been on you the whole time. I don't know what you're doing.
Thank you, commissioners. The next item, there wasn't any real elegant place to put it, so I put it on the agenda sort of right after water resources, just to discuss what our facility strategy is. And we have some new structures going in. We have some existing structures. We've tried to take a position generally that we don't want to hold on to any assets that we don't actually. We definitely do not want to hold on to any assets that we don't need. So we sold the ward building and the elections building. We're currently leasing them until the administration building is complete. But those are sold and we're not going to be maintaining them in the upcoming fiscal year. The administration building is still scheduled for a July 7th opening. That Coke Zero is still on this side of the ledger. A lot can happen between now and then though. But I have appreciated the weather from that perspective. So anyway, the new administration building, we've discussed that pretty significantly. That will essentially empty the annex, where all the annex people will be going over there, including environmental health. The USDA's lease expires with us in July of next year, which lines up exactly with when we wouldn't have that. And so the plan at this point would be to sell the annex building. However, it's not necessarily the entire campus, because also on that campus is the facility shop and the water resources field building. We still have need for those facilities. So at this point, the strategy would likely be to look at selling some version so that we can maintain the facility shop and we can maintain the water resources field services building at this time until we're ready to move them into a more permanent location. Then you look under the new proposed field services building that's on the LAS plan. That'd be a function of it that would house our fleet facility, our water resources, field services, and our road department under one roof. The idea there is we can get some economies of scale with people who are going to be working on our vehicles will be right next to the vehicles. We've done a preliminary concept just from a schematic just to see what kind of size we would need for it. So once that would be ready, we would sell would dispose of the fleet and the water resources field building and likely the road department building as well. and have a consolidation under that one facility. We have some preliminary, that's a joint from the enterprise fund and general fund use. So the enterprise fund would likely ultimately fund a significant amount of it. But there's some other things that we're not far enough down the road to have any more clarity of what that would entail. Plantation Drive, for example, is a very small road. It would require, I can't even really call it an upgrade. It essentially would need to be rebuilt to handle the traffic or the vehicles that we would be utilizing from a field services perspective. But the idea ultimately from a grant strategy is we want to minimize the number of facilities we have and have them that last us for the 50, 100-year cycle versus the more piecemeal. And the other facility that's of interest is the library. And our plan at this point would probably be just to sell the library once the functional library moves to its new location at Wire Park, and then put that up from there. And then the third element you have on your new and proposed building is the LAS gymnasium. You heard Lisa talk about that being as one of the priorities of phase one. We have 2 proposed gymnasiums. We would probably include at this point, I mean, we'll filter through the commentary process, but that would probably be included as one of the priorities of the first phase, along with some of the fields to go forward. Again, we don't have any pricing. It would come in very high right now for whatever it is, but we're going to move into that direction from the civil and design perspective going forward. So that's the overall approach to some of our buildings. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have on it.
I've got one, and this might be, you or Michael, but, if you're gonna eventually move everybody to the LAS location, as far as like staging of material like gravel and dirt for shoulder rebuilds and that type thing, would we still maintain an area in the Watkinsville area, or would everything go to LAS?
I would look at the potential of having an additional staging area. I don't know whether we will or won't in the long run, but we gotta make sure it makes sense from I don't want our laydown yard to turn into a laydown yard, but I do want to make sure we're efficient with it too. So we have some, we're a few years away from that, but that's something we would look at and pursue.
My initial thoughts would be everything would go to the one spot. We haven't finalized that out or anything, but just in my head when I was sitting here thinking through it, everybody reports the same spot, they load up there. I understand sometimes gravel may go further, more often go south than north. But I think what you're gaining in efficiency by having all 3 groups together, you're not gonna see a huge reduction in your performance of the group. Plus the part of the goal is to get, at least in the industrial part, there's huge demand for that area, as you know, between the annex and the road department. So if we could get that back on the tax rolls and open that up to some businesses that want to come in and produce some jobs and stuff, I think the trade-off there. So I guess if we were able to, but so my thought process was anything that's existing that we're moving out of would be surplus. So roughly 6 buildings between taking things off that are going away and adding the new buildings that we got under thought for construction. We'd be reducing our building count by 6, which is pretty huge. 6 roofs we're keeping up with, and sewer systems and all the junk that goes along with it. So what I kind of want to come away today with is just in general, getting rid of the annex. If everybody's, any thought we need to hang on to that for some reason. We got to work out some timing issues like Justin mentioned with the water department and also facilities group. The others is consolidation of those three groups into one location. We picked LAS because there's 200 and something acres out there, and it's just land we already got instead of going trying to find some and creating something a different location. Sell the library. I think we could probably put that on the market first quarter of next year. And talking to the chairman of the library board, they're expecting to go to bid on construction at Wire Park during this last quarter of this next couple months, and hopefully start construction first part of the year. And they're talking, 6 to 8 months. So we work out a similar situation where we would lease the property for, a certain amount of time after the sale, which seemed to work really well here.
I'd also add one other thing about just comment on the facility shop. We need to maintain it for the current. That's probably not the long-term play though. We have site reserved on our administrative building site for a facility shop. It just wasn't economical to do that at this time. It was, so we'll pursue a long-term, but that is a long-term building that needs to be centrally located because they primarily spend their time either at the administrative building or at the courthouse as opposed to out on the roads. So the existing one will be fine for the short term, but they'll need to have a permanent solution. And again, probably 2 to 3 years down the road, we'll pursue that. No.
So that they definitely need a spot to go for sure. I just don't like the 2 to 3 year things. That's one of the things I think we need to work on. If everybody's comfortable with these items, is to go ahead and start some engineering and civil work on what these buildings are going to look like and start trying to get some numbers together. I think we got a rough schematic on the facilities building, but the gym at the LAS site and consolidation of the fleet, really going in and start looking at engineering on the civil side as well as the building. I think what I'm kind of envisioning is it'd be metal building construction, and we go in and brick the outside, and then we can build out the inside ever how it needs to be done there. But if everybody's okay in general with what we're talking about, then we start moving forward with some of the preliminary design work on these things and start trying to get some hard cost in. The other advantage to going ahead and doing that is if grant funding does come available, or there's another round of money given away from the federal government, we're sitting here with shovel ready projects, or even a slowdown in the economy. We'd be sitting here ready to maximize some dollars to get some of these projects knocked out. So. Any major heartburn with anything?
Very good. I would say, with the annex, possibly look at where the water resources is, maybe include that in the sale, but then do a lease back for the duration, just for the, because it is one contiguous property, and it might be easier to sell the entire track as opposed to breaking it out. That might help us too, maintenance wise. I'd take that off the books. Let somebody else take care of that as well. Because we really don't know what that timeline is as far as the new building you're talking about at LAS.
Yeah, it's gonna come down to that's why I think we gotta get some real numbers on what it's gonna cost, and then.
I'm not gonna throw out 2 to 3 years again.
If I could say something, with the facility at LAS, the gymnasium. I think it would be wise to seek out whether there's private funds, whether there are major corporations that are in the sporting business that like to give money to people like us that are gonna do it. It may be, you know, they get some ad space or something. But there may be some, you know, the printed money that's coming out of DC, they're gonna give it to somebody. But really explore all those avenues to see what we might be able to do. Because I do think, and I've said this before, I think with the, you know, the questions I asked about the school system, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I do think probably as we do these contracts for the school system, it's probably gonna get worse before it gets better. But the only way it can be better is to get away from having to use their property. So I think that to me is a critical area because sports is a big deal in this county. Whether it's pickleball, whether it's soccer, lacrosse, whatever it might be. And so I think that's a high priority is to get as fast as we can. That's why, you know, the Calls Creek issue is critical because it starts that domino of us being able to get at the LAS side. So, and if I'm wrong about our contract, you know, with the school system, somebody can tell me I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. Cause they didn't have to do that. You know, we got costs too. And, it'd be nice to have a good relationship with the facilities, but it doesn't seem to be the case. So.
Any other questions, comments, or emotional outburst on facility?
I mean, I think we're doing a good job so far. I think we need to just continue to move forward what we're doing. It's all about the money. We got to find the money before we can build anything for sure. So, but you know, I mean, in the long run, I'd like to see us build both gymnasiums at the same time instead of building one. But, I mean, I know, Justin, I see your eyebrows going over there, but I mean, because that would definitely, you know,
Fix the
satisfy some
problem.
things. But I think we'll get there when we can get there, and we've proven that already. We're moving forward on a lot of projects, and we've done good on those projects. So, and we'll continue to do that in the right way.
Since he brought it up, don't want to lose a good opportunity. I would also look at one building that is big enough. If the numbers work better that way. So I know they got them.
I made a comment that you need to stay out of North Dallas, but
Sort of fair too much.
oh man, I'll put it this way. We'll look at both, but talk to Bobby about it, and just some of the maintenance of the HVAC really starts getting challenging with those McKinney style buildings. But we'll explore all options.
That's all I ask. And that may be, I mean, I look at if that is a possibility. Cause I know it's difficult for Parks and Rec as we continue to grow in population, especially using school buildings and I respect their issues about their use. And then Lisa and her folks trying to get practice time. Cause I remember coaching and it was difficult back when my daughter and son were playing, and they're getting old. That's what it is. But, but I think that is a critical issue, cause I know it's difficult for her and her staff. You know, you got this campus, this school gymnasium, we can kind of fit it around this, they're doing that. And it becomes just an animal trying to do that.
The need for space is indisputed, for sure. And we'll explore all options for that.
Thank you.
Public Works.
All right, so I booked this meeting right on top of Jody's vacation, so you're gonna have to suffer me and Mr. Silver Medalist push up back there for technical. Technical information. He doesn't have a microphone right now, so. Anyway, so, one of the big issues we wanted to put together was a 5-year paving plan. And so what Jody did is we took sort of a existing spend level 5-year plan, which is the 2.5 million, and a T-Splost 5-year plan, which would be the 8.5 million option. We took our road rating study and some of the parameters that I gave Jody was as far as putting together, when we're doing a subdivision, let's do the whole subdivision so you don't have the partial streets. The original rating had all these different segments. And so if we're gonna pave a road, let's pave the whole road and not have it look like a candy cane stripe with different treatments. So kind of a similar treatment over the top. And so what you have is a 5-year fiscal year 23 on out for 5 years. The closer you get to current date, the more precision you're gonna get with it. Our public works crew would still do annual internal assessments, because if there's a catastrophic road or something that needs to jump the list, we would bring that back to you going forward. So what you have essentially is a fiscal year 23, and that's either option, because if we do have T-Splost pass, that's not going to affect fiscal year 23's paving program. So that's the recommendation for those. But then you'll see the pretty significant and sizable difference between the two as far as the quantity of lists. And what T-Splost also has in there, one of the things recommended, and this becomes a policy choice that this board will need to make next calendar year, is alternate treatment surfaces. So one of the examples is a micro surface overlay. Winder recently did it. So we were paying roughly 200,000 a mile for our resurfacing program. So they did theirs on the Winder side. The micro surface was about 100,000. So it's roughly 50% of what we're paying for the for our standard treatments. It's not a structural improvement. It's not going to improve the structure or rebuild anything. This is more of a reconditioning of the upper layer. And it would go on the better streets just to make sure that they stay better as opposed to slipping further back. We're not overrun with contractors who offer this treatment, and so it doesn't make sense to do it under our current spend because we're just not going to get the scale. And it wouldn't be economical to do it. So this would be an option that we would have if would T-Splost pass to couple those together. Like I said, Jody had some conversations with the Winder director. They were satisfied with it. We have a list of roads that you could go look at, which were done recently. We're also going to identify some little further in the past roads done with a microsurface treatment, whether that option is going or not. But this is sort of the approach that we'd like to take. Again, we'll know more following the November election, what our spend level is going forward. But this is sort of the 5-year plus or minus paving plan, depending on what our spending is. Yeah, anything more technical than that, you're gonna have to ask Michael Wayne.
Well, we don't want to leave Michael out. Help with some of the acronyms that was on that T-Splost list. What's FWM?
That's full width milling.
Okay. So when you say microsurface, you explain that, what's chip seal?
So these are just varying levels of more surface treatment that they would go on. So what we would be looking at is essentially they go on with a small upper layer it's more of the topping itself versus anything structural.
So it's the old days when they put tar down and then put the rocks on top of it, it's chip seal. And then the micro surfacing as they come back on top of that to help keep those rocks from flying up and busting you. So there's those, the micro surfacing is the one that intrigues me because you've been around here long enough, you've seen the chip seal, and there's a lot of drawbacks in my opinion to that, but
So it wouldn't be an asphalt surface, it'd be like a triple treatment, right? Sure.
well, you wanna help
It would be asphalt.
Okay.
on the top.
You know what, and triple treatment, that's an old term, they don't do.
Triple surface. Yeah, that's, basically taking a dirt road and, converting it, but yeah. So, yeah, well, I mean, it's still done,
But that's not what we're looking at.
not in this case.
And then the edge mill and thin overlay, how is that different from micro seal? Edge mill plus thin overlay.
Those are just varying versions of what we do currently. When we say a resurfacing, that's what we're talking about,
Yeah.
depending on what's specific to that road.
Some of the stuff I read on the micro seal was that's more of the sand and the tar on the final topping versus the resurfacing is what we did on this last time on Simonton Bridge and all the roads we paved. It's true resurfacing of the road.
So it prolongs the life, the micro surface
Yes.
prolongs life. Along the study that we had done recently where it graded all of our streets. So this 5-year plan with the P-SPLOST follows that pretty much.
They do.
Okay.
And so it required a little bit of art to go into it because the study divided everything sort of into 1,000-foot segments. If you have like a 4-mile long road, you don't want that many thousand segments of differing. So it's a little bit of a blending of them, of a way to get them all kind of in a uniform approach. But yeah, it does follow the study as the guide and the basis. And then the field observation is going to go back and, if we have a blowout or something, that's going to have to go its way to the top of the list, or if our field crews see stuff out there that really needs to rise level.
Now, all this work would be contracted out.
That's correct.
Okay. And it's pay as we go, correct?
So really what you have is the delta between what we normally budget and what we might have the ability to budget.
Now, a question came up the other night, when we were talking about T-SPLOST, somebody asked about bike lanes. Is there any conversation about while we're doing this, that we designate bike lanes on one of these streets, or this
No, it's just no adding. Just under the T-SPLOST, we're not adding anything other than the multi-use trails.
okay,
So it's just taking care of what we got.
all right, that was the question that came up. I think
Yes.
somebody was thinking
Mhm.
we'll be doing road work. I think my answer was a non-answer.
Okay.
I just said pretty appropriate, so I just want to make sure about that.
So really the thing to be thinking about here is the micro sealing and, so Justin will send out those list of roads. If y'all could take the time to go kind of look at them and kind of know what we're getting into. Like, so we're trying to find some older roads as well about how long these intermediate treatments last and how much additional time we get. But that's going to be the big question. When T-SPLOST passes, we'll come back with the final version, but that's the real question to the board. Do you want to just maintain our normal true resurfacing of a road, or do we want to kind of look at some on these less used roads, something like in subdivisions and that type of thing? We could go in with this micro seal, knock out a lot more road miles, to get them extended life. But we want to make sure we're not getting something that's going. If we're gonna spend $100,000, that's only gonna last 5 years. It's not gonna make sense to do it. Or if it's a quality that we don't feel like is, we want to have, so,
So we're gonna put this list on our website
yes,
very soon.
tomorrow or this afternoon.
We'll be on the frequently asked questions section.
No. No, it'll,
It's very impressive, I mean, to see what
yeah.
with and without.
Mm,
It's a big delta.
It is. Now, saying that, let me ask a question is, so we're gonna, once we through this 5-year plan, will we need a T-Splosh after this first 5 years if we're successful? What will be left after, I mean, looking at this list?
well, just getting up, we need to get to a funding level. If we're gonna not do T-Splost, then we'll have to allocate more of the general fund dollars to get up, to keep on the track. So we're doing the 20 miles of road per year, and we're not quite there yet. So that would be the question to the community at that point is, do you want to? Yeah.
I'm just asking because the list looks pretty, a long list. I'm
It
just
is.
asking What's gonna be left?
Yeah.
To do.
Oh, it's the other half of the roads over 5 years.
So how
So
many miles is this?
this, based on our $200,000 a mile, we'll be doing 213 miles of road, which is roughly half of the paved roads. So over the next 5 years, you could hit the next half. And so, yeah.
And of course, the other
Yeah.
question I ask is, would that continue the 1 mil reduction?
Yeah, I believe everything, the resolution we voted on for as long as T-Splost is in effect, that the 1 mil would stay down.
We were talking about the next time. They're already down to the next. T-Splosh.
If it's repassed, we would maintain the 1 mil reduction. And then depending on, I don't know if we could grab any more general fund. Because we're putting most of our money into this repaving to get caught up. So if we do look at it and this is very successful, we don't have to pave as many, or we put the 20 miles, we could still have additional money. You could possibly even look at carrying more of your general fund support of roads through the T-Splosh.
Thank you.
I'll say one other thing. We had breakfast with the road department this morning. I know Michael's in the audience and I give him a hard time, but we received you guys should be extremely proud of the work the road department does and the resources. Our roads are kept as well as they are because they work really hard at it. And so I think it's just worth from a public just to acknowledge the work that they do in-house also.
I agree with that as well.
Mhm.
I will say one thing, in terms of our roads maintenance wise moving forward, the micro seal, and Michael, you might want to comment on this too. It's just been my experience when you put a thin layer over something, you don't address the subsurface cracking. And so eventually that comes back through. And so I think that eventually it's going to prove itself out because you're going to have a timeline to know. But if you don't do something like a OGI or some kind of other treatment, then your surface cracking comes back through. And the biggest problem with roads is moisture getting down into the base level down below the paving. And so when you have dry times like this, warmer weather, you don't see the problems, but you move into the winter when it gets cold and you got water in there, then it starts tearing the roads up. And so,
Yeah, the micro surfacing, what needs to be understood also is if there's any impurities in the road, for as dips, low spots, whatnot, with that small amount of material, 3/4 inches material, it does not level the road out. So if you've got any crossover pipes that's got settlement on it or wheel rutting, just doing the micro does not fix that. You have to go in and do additional deep patching, leveling, then it gets back in. The micro is not for that road. If you got a subdivision that's 8, 10 years old, 12 years old, that's in good shape, you possibly come in crack seal and then do the micro and extend it by 5 to 8 years, maybe 9. Depends on the volume of the traffic.
And definitely every road would not be a candidate, and that's part of what the study was supposed to produce, is the ones that would be good for microsurfacing and those that wouldn't, so.
Yeah, there's,
We had.
you're not gonna get a 40 PQI road with microsurface. These are all these are good roads that are structurally intact that just could use a little resurfacing,
That's right.
refurbishing, I'd say, more than nothing structural. It's not gonna help it.
Well, the biggest thing is, early on in the paving days, you saw more of the asphalt in it. And as time has moved on, we've got a more blended asphalt mix where you've got a lot of recycle that's in it. And so your asphalt levels are going down. And so that's why initially the pavement looks very dark and black, and then it starts turning grayer more quick. And because of the lack of asphalt, lack of tar in it, basically. And so the tar is what keeps the water out of the base. And so,
Yeah,
just
versus
having to
like
deal
what we
with that.
did with Coleman Ferry Road. That was 100% virgin material when that road was paved with E-mix versus, we're at 90%, we follow DOT specs at 10% recyclable. So, but yeah, you're not getting what you used to get as far as materials. And that's why, like you said, they oxidize out in 4 or 5 years. When I do that, the cracks come in. You gotta pretty much go into your maintenance within 5 years to start crack sealing and catch it a little bit at a time instead of wait until it gets to the point that you've got to go in there and actually start doing reclaiming, deep patching and overlaying. A little bit of preventive maintenance.
and this micro seal might be the application for that.
Yes.
Is that you could go over the top of it and then, then you're bringing it back up. So you're sealing it.
Yes.
And it'll be one of the tasks for the department this upcoming year, just kind of dig in a little deeper, and we'll bring it to you guys, have you look at it, just whether it is from a policy choice, something we want to take on or not, versus just get a little more out of our standard processes.
I don't know if this is a micro question, maybe a several question, but, I would like to say when, but if T-Spot passes, how quick will we see that go into play as far as the citizens concerned? Because I mean, obviously, for us to take advantage of it for the future, we need to show success very quick as far as the paving of the extra money we're going to get in T-Spot. So how quick will we actually see that in action?
It'll be your second year of the 5-year plan will be when the additional roads will be added. Just because of timing, the FY, what are we in 23?
FY 24
Yeah.
is when. you
So
would see
first,
it.
as you look at both plans, the first year is the same, just because we won't start collecting until April. And then our first priority is to fund the millage rate reduction. So it'll be that next paving season when the additional roads will be added.
What the road work that was going on out yesterday in the Eastville community, and I'm not sure what you call it, that had I guess they were doing the curb side over the street out there right off Colon Ferry, right across the Lane Creek. They were out there doing some work yesterday. I was curious what they call that, and was that getting it prepared for patching, for more asphalt, or to be doing the road?
I'm not familiar with that. I didn't know they was out there. It wasn't none of our guys.
It was, I think.
We weren't doing any paving out there.
Not paving, it was they were fixing the like potholes along the side of the road.
Oh, that was a state.
On ACOP.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I
what
guess
we've got,
was that right there at the intersection of Lane Creek and,
yes,
not Lane Creek, at Cold Springs and, yeah,
yes.
that's the
ACOP.
ACOC. So what, is that preparing the road for the paving?
Actually, that's another tar and gravel road.
That's a tar and gravel road. I thought that
Yes.
was.
And it was on our striping list to be restriped this year. And that's why I'm not a big fan of the tar and gravel roads, because the maintenance perspective, the grass eats it up. You can't go through there with motor grader, backhoe, backhoe and want to cut the shoulders off.
And it's labor intensive. You gotta hold
Because
that.
you only
yeah.
got 3/4 inches material. So what we had to do is go in there and try to burn off that additional grass. And take the pothole patcher with CRS2 and the small stone and seal it back in there. So when we stripe, we're not striping over the top of our grass.
Okay, I
It's
got you.
trying to improve the approach into the road.
I got you. Yeah. It looks, it's intense stuff to do that, but it's
Yeah.
one guy holding the thing, doing all of that, and
Yeah, you got the truck and
truck and
driver
everything,
going down through there. It's pretty. Then you're blowing off the loose material. So you don't have it flying up on the windshields
Right,
and whatnot, but. Yeah, I'm not a fan of those roads. They work where you gotta have them, but they were built better back then than they are now.
I agree. That was more of a specialty thing back in that day, and
Exactly.
you had a lot of contractors that were doing it, and now you've only got maybe one or two in the whole state.
The art of
Does-
setting up a topsoil base is
Gone.
forgotten.
It's gone. Yep. That's what we have is a lot of our roads are soil-based roads.
Yes.
And they were triple surface because that was a quick way to get it paved during the day. And you had good contractors doing the work. And so today we're having to figure out ways to make sure that we have a good topping on that, because you don't have just take, for example, the Mars Hill road that we just did. You've got a lot of gravel underneath the asphalt, which is, the design way to do it. But back in the day when we did all the others, you didn't have gravel. You had some gravel, but it was mostly topsoil. And so that's two different totally ways you do maintenance on roads.
While I'm here, just a few project updates, for everybody. The November agenda setting meeting, you'll have the speed zone ordinance. We've examined all the different speeds, some of the requests for reduction. You'll have that in November, on the November agenda setting meeting for discussion. The 5 intersection improvement projects, that's Lane Creek at Morris Ford, Lane Creek at Snows Mill at Cold Springs, Union Church at New High Shoals, and Astondale at Column Ferry. We have a designer looking at them all. They've completed their ICE studies, which is the intersection. I knew it, but basically what kind of design you need based on the intersection movements. They all do support and recommend roundabouts as the intersection improvements. And so they're going to move forward with some of that soon. And once those are designed, we will have the designer make priority recommendations about which one should be ticked off first. And then it'll just be a matter of funding as those go. Hog Mountain multi-use path, which you heard a little bit about as far as the trail master plan. The horizontal and vertical geometry has been laid out, and they've done the site distance. So they're currently examining the right-of-way easements. And so they're moving forward with that. You might have noticed very little work on Experiment Station because they can't get pipe right now. And so they're paused right now until December, which they anticipate the pipes coming in, and then they'll move forward. Last I heard, they still think August, though I don't believe they will be completed by August. So next year, that'll likely extend a little further based on all the other material acquisition issues that they're having right now. 53 at Union Church. Here's what we know from GDOT. They have ordered the materials. They will not provide a time when the materials will be delivered here. That's for the light at Union Church Road. Mid-November, which is the next few weeks, we're going to go out for solicitation for an installation. So we'll have an installer ready to go to put up the light. So this is one where GDOT is going to provide the material, has approved the design, and we're going to provide the installation for the traffic signal. And then 53 at Snows Mill. So the preliminary plan field review has been submitted. The right-of-way plan submission is anticipated in January or February. And then Race Church at 53, the roundabout there is running ahead of that one. Their right-of-way plan submissions anticipated in December of this year. And both of those are following federal processes, and just as a general comment, we may want to set a very high threshold limit for future federal projects for the amount of effort that goes into these, so.
I think a good example of that is what Michael did out there recently where Lane Creek intersection was improved. I don't know if any of you guys have been out that way, but they did a great job on that as well.
So we have before and after aerial photos of those, and we're gonna put together a little release as far as, again, I talk about the great work that that crew does internally. This is something they did in-house, and it's a huge benefit.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up too. I was gonna also, because I thought, I've been watching it as I go by there, I've been watching that go up a lot. But is that gonna be similar to what Hog Mountain and Cold Springs is gonna be done? Is that gonna be, I mean, I thought we were gonna do
It's gonna be a roundabout.
Hog Mountain, Hog Filter and Cold Springs.
No, that'll be something different.
Because I thought we had talked about that, we had space to realign definitely at one point. The last thing I heard was we were ready.
No, the last
That
one,
we had land that we could actually move that a little bit.
no, the
We
last
don't.
one,
Where'd you get that from?
GDOS, no. And that's gonna require significant study and work from a design, that's gonna require outside help on the design.
That's where I saw something where we did. Guess we go back and check the email.
We hope to, but, yeah, that was a little more complicated. Anytime the state gets involved, it gets more complicated.
Well, there's some things on the other side of 78 on 53 that look that and look that. Intersection line.
When we were looking at Cold Springs and,
How about on the other side
yeah,
of
when we
78?
looked, we also mentioned Hebron Church,
Yeah.
State Route 53. And again, it was kind of the same situation that when we're scored against other projects in the state, safety wise, we didn't score very high, so there was no state money available at this point.
All right, I'm gonna, if no other questions, I'm going to bring Guy up for.
We take 5 minutes.
We can, let me add one other thing, and this will no longer be an issue a year from now, but my understanding is there's court at 12:30 in this room. And if we start bumping up against it, we'll probably just recess this meeting and try to go across the hall and finish up if necessary. I feel like we got about an hour left in us, but you take
Yes.
5 minute break, that's right.
All right, Guy, take away.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. We've got 3 items to talk through, giving you handouts of those. First one is Unified Development Code amendments, departmental structure, and then potential permitting, inspection, process changes. If you look on the next page, under our UDC amendments, we have a couple that we're looking at for this upcoming year. There may be others, but this is initially what we're looking at. The timber harvesting, development restrictions. I think, most of you are familiar with these, but there is a 3-year moratorium if these certain criteria are not met, on development, for non-residential, multifamily or subdivisions. Currently, it reads that it has to be a bona fide agricultural activity. And 2, there has to be the 50 square feet per acre basal area left when it's cleared. The main reason these were put into place, and these are typical code requirements for this type of UDC, but usually along with it, it had a landscaping recompense ordinance. Meaning if you took a tree down, you'd have to replace it with a certain number of trees, right? We don't have that. We have a landscape ordinance that requires trees to be planted per that landscape ordinance, but we don't have a tree recompense. And so, staff's question is, is this really necessary? And so that would be, something that would come before you guys, both the text amendment and planning commission to weigh in as you as well. But the idea would be to remove those restrictions, that 3-year moratorium restriction. Any questions on that one?
There's no state requirements on that.
That's right. That's right. It would just be the local ordinance.
So the intended consequences, give me a real life example. or
Well,
pretend that-
someone could come in and clear the trees off of their property. And they can do that now, but then they would have to hold it for 3 years before they could develop it, right?
We're easing up on that.
Yes, right, yes. Yeah, then the next UDC amendment is House Bill 1405. That one came out last year. And this is amendments to the zoning procedures law. So we're working through this with council, with Daniel. He had to step out, but he and I and our planning staff and we'll be working on this and looking at it and seeing how we need to amend our ordinance to address these changes legislatures put through on ZPL. And those amendments are due by next July. So we have some time on that one. The second or the third one there, the UDC amendments on the water supply. This is one that's come up recently. We allow for minor subdivisions, 5 lots or less. If someone were wanting to split past that 5 lots, then they have to go through a major subdivision process. So say you have 200 acres, you do 5 acres, you do 5 splits, 5 20 acre splits on 100 of it. And then you want to do the remainder. You'd have to go through a major subdivision process, irregardless of the size of those lots, right? So what that does is it kicks you into a major subdivision. And under the major subdivision requirements, you have to run a water line into that subdivision if we have water out on the county road. Staff's wondering if there's not a better way to do that for these large lot subdivisions, as opposed to a major subdivision with 1, 2, 3 acre lots. So we've had a couple of issues with these major subdivisions that fall under those 5 acres, even for that additional major subdivision. It's still just 5 acre lots, but for those 5 lots. So for those 5 lots, they would have to run a water line down that street. So, that'll come to you guys as well. And we'll work with water resources on that and fire also. But it's a considerable cost that may suggest to that person to do more lots or smaller lots in order to recoup that cost of having to run that water line.
And the other thing with that is water quality is an issue because, our minimum standard, is 6-inch pipe. So then you're going to have just a few lots. Then you're going to have stagnant water.
Yes. Okay, no questions on those. Departmental structure. This is a proposed restructuring of our department, adding a planning manager and planning and development manager. You can see 2 planners, a consultant and clerk under the planning manager, and then under the development manager, Bureau Veritas, code enforcement inspector and clerk. We're looking at this to try to gain efficiency in these 2 major services that we provide. We're advertising for these now with the vacancies that we have. We have 2 vacancies where Monica and Grace had left, so we're trying to fill those. We're hoping that we'll be able to fill these with qualified personnel. It's just a very tight job market, as everyone knows. So these are out for advertisement now. We'll see if this is something that will work for us and if we can get qualified people for that. And if there's no questions on that, we'll move on to our potential permitting and inspection process changes. I think you're familiar with House Bill 493, adopted back in, I think it was 2020 by the legislature, which allows builders to hire private qualified firms to review and inspect for state and county code compliance, as opposed to the traditional process of the county staff doing that work. In light of that legislation, we're wondering if maybe we shouldn't require privatized code compliance permitting reviews across the board. And so that would require that those individuals, those builders, those developers, to hire their own third-party reviewer to then submit documents to us for permitting.
So there's no case where you think the in-house has to do it.
There is, well, and hang on, we'll get through this. There are some instances where we will have responsibilities. So the county responsibilities would be managing the permitting application process. That's the intake of the application, that's the issuance of the permit, and so on. There would be the review of the private permitting inspection reports, which are submitted by the builder or developers, the firm, that would demonstrate compliance to ensure the reports address the pertinent code requirements. We would use our consultants to do that review, right? It would be a building official reviewing their submitted report to make sure that it meets all the standards that the report does. And then we would also use our qualified consultants from the planning side to do the same thing. And then finally, we would do a final site inspection to ensure compliance, and that's either through with a CO or a certificate of completion. So we would have certain points where we would be able to catch issues or errors with the plans or with the site. But there's a lot that goes on in between that, right? So we would issue that permit based on that engineer's review of both state and county codes, and they would certify that it meets both. And we would make sure that that review is complete. And then we'd issue that permit, and then we would do a final inspection to make sure that they met both our ordinance, but then also what they had submitted and was reviewed. So if you go to the next page, there are some reviews that would not be within our control, right? So the state law, even that state law 493 does not allow private reviews and inspections for state agencies such as environmental health, GDOT, and then Oconee Soil and Water, which is our erosion sediment control. So these state agencies, we would have to have their approval along with that engineer's report that would be submitted to us. So that would have to be done prior to us issuing a permit. And then, of course, we still have to do erosion sediment control inspections for all developments because we're, one, the local issuing authority, and two, because of our requirements for MS4 permitting. And then finally, we would make sure we retained responsibility for water and sewer, both permitting, review, and installation, because that ties into a larger county system that could be affected. And then finally, the last page, possible, Amory, this is for you, possible results should not, compliance not be met. So it would not end up being an appeal of administrative decision, right? So what are the consequences? Say that developer or builder does not build it according to plans and or not according to state or local ordinance. Our staff would have to say, no, this is not correct. You would have to, and if that developer or builder does not want to make the changes to mitigate or correct the deficiencies, then they would appeal to you guys for that, right? And so that appeal would then be either after the fact variances, or you could override my decision. So obviously that would be your purview if I were incorrectly interpreting the ordinances. And then if those variances are denied, then it could be, potentially costly, and both in a time and a dollar amount to that developer, but it would be based on errors that they had incurred on site, whether it was from a survey standpoint or a building standpoint. And I just listed some of the typical site violations that we find. And you can see those there, but mainly it's landscaping, curbing, parking lot, drive aisle widths, and all those items that are listed there. So that's kind of the overview, brief. Before we move forward in depth with this, we wanted to get your thoughts.
So the goal from what I'm trying to get us to is you come see us at the beginning of the process, they check it off, you get a permit. You go do what you're supposed to do, qualified engineer does your inspections. You come back to us with those and say, I'm ready to move in. Gabby does her final inspection and you get a CO or you don't. And then this, the developer's personal responsibility to make sure everything's done right. If they go out similar to, if they're somehow their engineers missed it and they're a foot off the property line, it's supposed to be 10 feet, then they gotta fix it, or we gotta tell them it's okay. But it kind of gets us out of the middle. We're just kind of managing the process from a distance. There'll be our normal list of inspections will be given to the homeowner or the developer. He'd make sure all those inspections are done. They would submit them, and we do the final review. And then we're sort of out of the middle of the process of construction, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess that's where I'm lost because I'm trying to figure out why. I mean, if we're doing a final site inspection, at what level of inspection is that compared to what that's already approved with the private company? I mean, they're doing, I guess, because if they're getting approved, if we're gonna have a private firm do all the inspection and then we're gonna sign off on it, why aren't we sending somebody out? Or at what level are they going back out and doing another final inspection? Because, I mean, they've already done it. And that's
Yeah,
why that
That's right.
483 is in place.
They have to provide us that final inspection report. You're right. But we have, by law, we have 5 days to verify that that is accurate. And so we would have that final inspection to do that. And we have to issue a CO, right? Nobody else can.
So
So in order to do that, that's,
I get you. I'm just saying, I guess my confusion is because I mean, I don't do it, so I don't understand it. Mark would probably understand a lot better than I would, maybe even these two, but if we're having a private company do it and we have a final inspection, if we didn't have the private company, she'd still have to be doing exactly the same thing, would she not?
that's right.
It's everything in between. So right now, you got to call the guy's office to get your footing inspection. And so we're in the middle of it. We got to.
Yeah, and I think maybe we're talking about two different, you're thinking more of a site
Yes,
as opposed to a building,
that's
right?
correct.
So
I know there are other issues that
we're
we
talking
can do,
about
that
the
we have to
two,
do this.
yeah, we're talking about the two processes together, but certainly building would be one. And like Chairman said, there's footing, framing, I mean,
Right.
Rough end, there's all these different inspections that would be cut out from our
Okay, I
responsibility.
understand that a little better. than-
It's
Get
just the
that.
final check for the county to say,
And in that case, we
But
can't see
trust
any of
but
that,
verify,
right?
I guess.
Yeah,
Because
I
we
hear you.
can't see the inside, we can't see the walls, so we don't.
All right, 2 points on part. If you're getting interim inspection reports, they'll be reviewed for appropriateness at that time.
Not interim, but you would have a report at the beginning that says their plans
Yeah.
meet our codes, state codes. And then we would get a report at the end
All right,
of
so,
all those inspections.
okay, so we're not gonna be seeing it as they go along.
That's right. We won't. It'll be at the beginning and at the end.
Okay, so.
And it's on them to make sure they do it as they said they wanted to do it.
And that's my concern is that
Yeah.
it's gonna be more work on our folks to do it that way or less work, because I mean,
Let-
she's
less
still
work,
gotta go, if
less
we still
work.
gotta go out and do all the
It's less work.
inspection. It's a lot of work. And
It's
that's
less-
what I need to
yeah,
know.
It's
yes.
less work. It's less.
It's less work.
So
Less work.
going along with less work.
That's 'cause I don't have
Less cost for the home builder or the builder. How will we adjust our permit fee?
The state law says we can only charge half.
If they have a problem.
Right.
If that,
I think as part of the process, we would look at our fees. If we're taking that chunk out. Because right now, our inspection company gets a percentage of the fee, permit
Well,
fee.
no, hourly, it's an hourly rate.
It's
It's
hourly.
not a percentage,
So,
but
I
you're
think that's something we would definitely look at,
yeah.
it to say, all right, this is your permit fee. there'll be some study to look at adjustment for that.
I mean, that's only right. If you're not gonna do, I mean, that's part of the permit fee,
Right.
to cover the
Yes.
cost of inspection, but if you're not doing those
Right.
anymore, and you shift it to the private sector, then
Absolutely.
it only makes sense.
Well, you can't use building permits as revenue generation anyway.
I know you
It's got a
cover the
line to cost. Two other, I would just add, Guy, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can embed every required inspection within our UDC within this process, right?
That's correct. They have to duplicate our
Okay,
codes.
so more work, less work. I'm not, it sounds like I'm saying against it, but the downside on the back end, and I've received this call in former lives before, is you have homeowner ready to move in, they're moving down from Wisconsin, their house is ready to go, and lo and behold, it's 5 feet off the property line, not 10 feet off the property line. Those are hard calls to get. So it's just, that's the offset of somebody if their private firm isn't doing it correctly, which we could not be doing it correctly. It's down to human behavior. But I get daily reports from GeoHydro on our administrative building, and I'm following those. I know they're watching it. And so that's presumably what they would be doing on the private side too. But I'm just saying that's the offset is, they're responsible, which most people want responsibility until it doesn't work for them. So,
I've got a question that might get to some of it, because I tend to be suspicious of that person, but. All right, let's say for instance, somebody's doing a subdivision, they've got a land planner, and they're also an engineer, and they're also on the list of qualified, so it could be the same family handling all that. No,
Right, no. So they can't design and review their own work. That's,
okay, that's
Yeah.
one way.
and that'll be part of the
It's
quality.
got,
Yeah, and we didn't talk about that, but there is that whole RFQ that we would put out for those firms that could qualify for that, for those
and it-
builders and developers to use for that review. Yeah.
the other thing, I guess it gets down to these mistakes. You know, you tell them, no, you're gonna have to fix that, no, we'll take a shot with the commission. And then I guess is, how far we go with some of this? Cause I know some counties tear it up, start over.
Well, that's gonna be our decision at that point, and so, but it does, there's gonna be some cost to somebody messing up, because they're not gonna get the CO, they're gonna go through the process of getting the up tier to appeal. And then it's gonna be up to this board whether you move the house 12 inches or 10 foot or whatever
Yeah.
the number is, or, so.
I want to assume 99% of them are gonna do everything to make
Right.
sure the house is done and approved and get the CO. That's the thing. But there's gonna be that percentage out there that's gonna try to slide one over on Gabby. And she's got to be meticulous to find these mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, knows how to use the tape measure.
I know.
We've had some in the past where they come in and built a commercial building with the wrong thing, and this board's approved it, or even
Oh, yeah.
in a residential side. So it'll just have to be weighed out on a case by case basis. You start seeing the same people over and over again, you might change how you approach that. So,
The key, if you think.
but the main, to me, the benefit is we get out of the middle. It goes total private sector, so they're not screaming at us about they can't get an inspection. It's up to them to go to this list and work with that vendor. And what it's gonna cost them, that's gonna be that negotiation, hey, I got a hot deal, I need you to come out here now, so they can pay extra and keep the time flowing versus the hodgepodge. So, and I really think you're gonna see more state legislation similar to this 493 that's gonna expand this to this where we're headed anyway. So we'll just be kind of ahead of the curve, and it's my theory anyway. But you are giving up some control in that time frame, but I don't know that's going to be detrimental to the. Plus the homeowner if we're talking home or even a business building, if something turns out, there's something on the news in Atlanta where electricals wasn't inspected correctly, and the real those homeowners have nobody to go back on, where in in our scenario, they would go back against that licensed engineer, say this stuff ain't working, and so they would have some recourse to try to get their money to fix some of those problems.
And I think if it helps y'all, it's good. I guess I mean, if there's a list of 12 people that's inspecting and Gabby would have been the only one doing it originally, if we didn't have that list of 12, I mean, is it gonna push her? Because if 12 people inspecting a lot of stuff, and is there gonna be more flowing into you?
So she'll still be inspecting, from a soil erosion standpoint, right? Because in all development cases, because that is part of our LIA and MS4, so we don't have a choice on that one. So she'll be in those subdivisions, those developments, looking at those items. They're not a particular inspection order, you're not calling in that inspection, that's nothing like that, but and if there were any issues, complaints, mud in the road, those types of things, she would handle those. But it's really primarily that whole building permit process and inspection process. Because also on that subdivision side, water resources will be in there, they'll be looking at the storm, I mean, not stormwater, but sewer and water, right? So those types of inspections will continue to occur on the site development side. It's really the savings is in public works, on the road inspections, right? And then any planning inspections that we would, and stormwater. So those would all be done by that private firm and certified to be accurate, complete, and meet our code. But on the building side, that is where I think you see the most efficiency, right? Obviously, we do turn around on our reviews in one day, right? I mean, in not reviews, but in our inspections in one day. Our reviews are 10 days, but the inspection can occur, and maybe multiple inspections can occur, and maybe there's some efficiency there for that builder in doing that. And then it keeps us out of that middle, like the chairman said. And then there's that savings that we have from that third party that we use. So it's very similar to what we're doing now. It's just that third party is working for us. Now they'll be working for them and they'll be paying them. As opposed to us.
We'd no longer be doing plan reviews, right? We'd get a report from a qualified firm saying these plans meet the other than the zoning.
Well, 493 says that we have that 5-day window to make sure that it's complete and accurate for state codes. No, so if we want to follow
You do
that,
spot
we would.
checking.
So that BV would be on call for that review.
What if they're the original inspector?
Well, no, that's on the permitting side, right? So that's on the first submittal to us
Okay.
for the permit and the building plans. BV would review that for us. They're not
Review the
designed-
plans or review the report from the,
Review the report, which
Okay.
would have the plans in it.
Okay.
So it would be a complete package.
so that would be your audit prior to starting to make sure nothing obvious slipped through the cracks.
That's correct. So there will be that review at the beginning. And then of course the review at the end.
So, it looks like there's multiple steps in this whole process. You got somebody that's, let's just say that, and we don't have many of them going now, but a new subdivision. So then you've got all the site work that's involved in that. So Public Works will be inspecting, or through Public Works, they would be an inspector like.
Yes. Currently, you're talking about current process.
Yes.
That's correct.
And so with these revisions, would that still be the same?
No. We would not be responsible for any of those inspections. They would still have to do those inspections, but that would be in that report.
So if we were building a road, or a developer's building a road, then, and the county is going to accept that in the future, how would that be handled?
It would be based on the review of the engineer and the certification of the engineer.
Okay.
That it was correct, not county review.
Okay, so that everything with them would be private, so county people would not be out there looking to see if the storm drain or the whatever is installed
Or
correctly.
the base or the compaction, all that will be in the report.
With the exception of water and sewer.
That's correct.
the county would still do the inspections.
That's right.
Okay. And then, you know, the state law allows homeowners to build their own house as long as they're in it for 2 years. And so we're gonna have this has always been the issue. And with your new chart, maybe that would address some of these, but you know, a homeowner comes in without the level of expertise that a builder typically has. So there's a lot of questions that they have about how to do whatever. And unless the state's gonna change that process, I don't think they will. You're still gonna have that level of how do we do whatever? So who's gonna answer those? Would that be their hired engineer? Or would that be some official from the county?
Under this scenario, we would have a packet that says, this is how you do this, meaning this is how you go hire your third-party engineer. This is the list, and that is who would manage that process for them.
So if there is a discrepancy between, let's say that they hired a subcontractor that's licensed, and there's a discrepancy in what the state code minimums are versus what the inspector of the third party says, who then makes that determination?
So that would probably show up in the report, and under our review through BV, or whoever we use, but Bureau Veritas, would identify that as they would flag it as a potential issue, and that would be discussed at that time.
But let's say that there was a process, certain type of pipe you want to install this way as opposed to this way. And there's a gray area in the code. Who makes that determination if there's a discrepancy between the engineer and the contractor? And it's got to be made during the construction process, not at the end. Who makes that determination?
They would make that determination, and then if it was something that was noted in the report, we would catch it at that point. We wouldn't in the interim.
So there will be no code official from the county at this point. So we will not be,
During those interim inspections, no, that's correct. We would not be involved at all. That review and that engineer that they hired, that third party, would make those decisions.
so the county would be relinquishing the authority having jurisdiction, part of the code.
During that, no, because there would be the review, the report at the end showing all of those inspections by that third-party engineer that says it meets state code. We will have not seen it, but we would rely on his
And
report.
I think what Commissioner Thomas is asking, that there is that gray area where who's gonna play Solomon on it with the interpretation and.
And
So-
if it comes up at the end, then it would be,
But that may need to be something that we kind of look at as far as the structure, as far as like code interpretation going into it. And it may be something where the third party, somebody's got to say grace one way or the other as far as, I mean, I know you got I'm just speaking out, I'm sorry, but I know you have design professionals that say, yeah, I'm putting my stamp and my seal on it, but that's probably something before we launch off on this, we have to get our heads around. how to
well, and
do it.
currently I would make that call based on
Mhm.
both sides, right? Bureau Veritas giving us their opinion as our CBO, and then that reviewer or that designer.
Well, and then you have a third one, you got the licensed contractor.
That
So, in the whole scheme of this, it all comes down to liability. Who's gonna accept the risk?
The PE is, in your situation,
Are you
Well,
talking?
the guy who's doing the inspections is the one putting the stamp on it. So,
You also have the licensed
The
contractor that is putting his stamp on it. Because the state won't allow him to do the work unless he's licensed through the state. And he's got to pull the permit through this process. So You got multiple levels. And I guess my point is that sometimes there is conflict between the professionals. You know, the licensed contractor versus the engineer. And there's a discrepancy there. Who's gonna make that decision?
So I think the structure of that has to, we internally have to contemplate what the remedy is before we launch on the process.
I guess what I'm saying is somebody needs to be the XJ. You know, authority having jurisdiction. And my understanding was always was the county that had the trumping card because of, like you said, Solomon. Because eventually the county is gonna be the certificate issuer, not the licensed person. So if there's an appeal in the middle of construction, it sounds like to me that the county needs to have that authority to say, yes, this is the way that construction should happen.
And I think if we launch down this path, that's something on the front end we would need to resolve. And I've seen it either the chief building official or the planning director, or not necessarily advocating this, but there's sometimes a construction board of appeals that you could even go to. So.
I guess my other question on this whole process is that I know permitting wise that we've not allowed the contract, let's say the licensed builder or the contractor to be able to submit plans. Would that be something that at this point we would look at revising? As it, because I'm just thinking out loud, you know, there's only so many engineers in this area that, and right now their workload is so heavily overloaded that they may not be, I know time will change, but it may be that they can't physically have enough staff to be able to handle this. And so the other option would be to allow plans to come from these different contractor levels. And I know there's some state issues with that. They've got an old statute that's out there that won't allow you to draw plans or whatever because of the dollar amount. And there's been some talk about revising that.
Yeah, I think we certainly could, especially in those instances where it is, maybe that's the only work that's being done.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
or it's a small dollar amount, like you said, small.
Remodels is one of
Right.
the things I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We should flush that one out too.
And that might also help I'm just thinking about somebody that's in the rural area that's on a large tract of land that only has, you know, that one house as opposed to subdivision that might have 50.
Mhm.
And then, so in that case, you know, it's gonna be a little different process for those people.
Yeah, we're not ready to launch tomorrow.
Yeah.
2 to 3 years.
But it's still a living document. We can change when we need to see changes.
That's right.
That's right.
We just want to make sure in general, everybody was okay with moving toward a more private sector version of this. It seems to be what development communities kind of pushing at state level. I don't think it's all bad by any means. I think it's going to make it a lot more streamlined and allow people to move at their own pace. All good. All that means is we're gonna keep working on it and come back to you with the final document. So, yeah,
At some point, I guess, we have some conversation with some of our building community about it,
yes.
but I'd be interested in what your reaction, and they may have some ideas like Commissioner Thomas had.
Mhm. So, yeah, home builders, maybe even do some focus groups, I think is our new word. So, the developers and
Get kind of a
engineering
break on the
professionals and
focus
bring them.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
I don't think we're gonna get done by 12:30. We got 2 more things on the agenda, so is everybody all right with taking a lunch break, come back at 1 and we'll determine. Check over in the grand jury room, is that what's open?
I think it's open, yeah.
Okay, so we'll leave, check grand jury room first. If nobody's in there, come back over here if court gets done quickly. And then we'll, finish up.
Oh, so we're
We're gonna take a break, yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought we were going.
We're going to possibly change rooms here, so.
We should go ahead and take it.
Yeah.
We'll be back at
1 o'clock.
I did.
One of the water on screen, perfect example. We're showing it, we're showing a picture of behind the screen that's in place.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks, sir.
Just remind me of the setbacks like.
Thanks, sir.
Hey, sir.
I like your new,
All right, we're back in session, new location. With that, we are now on. Best thing to talk about after full stomach is money. Melissa's gonna come on,
Sure will.
help us out.
All right. So I'll just stand here if you want me to. Let me know. Finance update to kind of maybe answer some questions about things that have come up earlier on the topic. To give you an overview of where we are as of year end in FY 22 and switching over into FY 23 first quarter. I will start at the FY 22 summary.
Melissa, sorry to interrupt. If you could scoot over a little bit to the right, closer to Justin. Or you grab a chair, grab one of the chairs. Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't matter. Okay. Thank you. Alright. So FY 22, just keep in mind, the values that are on the presentation are unaudited. So we're in the final stages of our audit, but we don't have the finalized estimate of the statement. So looking at FY 22 in June 30, with a budget of 36.7 million, and that is prior to amendments that we reviewed on Tuesday. So on your approval, that number would be the final number. With revenue of 42.4 million, 115% collected. So the following page kind of shows you where that those extra collections, those unexpected collections came from. Some of the larger items. The largest one being our ARPA funds. So we've received all of our ARPA funds, but we are only allowed a certain amount of that that we can allocate to revenue each year based on formula. So FY 22, that number was 3 million. The auction sales tax came in about 600,000 more than budgeted, and then we did have the sale of the election and operations building, which were budgeted. That's an additional 780,000. Expenditures for prior year, with a budget of 38 million, 34 million, 75,000. Leaves us at 88.5% spent. One thing that is included in that budget are the large projects that are accounted for in the general fund. So things were approved throughout the year, we adjust the budget to cover that entire project. So that entire project may not be. The following page shows you some of those variances as well. So I wouldn't say that these are savings, because we're still going to complete these projects. They're just likely to happen in FY 23 or future years. Our 22 paving is still being completed. We had about $880,000 that wasn't spent in prior year. Projects Hog Mountain National Use, Snows Mill Roundabout, and Grace Church Roundabout. Those projects are still in design phases. Vehicles, along with other supply chain issues that we've heard everyone talk about, vehicles had kind of the same problem. Either the vehicle we were looking for wasn't available, or we weren't able to get it. So also with the end of the year, we can talk about where our fund balance is. We have FY 22 fund balance containing our safety fund balance of 27%, as well as non-spendable. And the board did vote to uncommitted fund balance, so we no longer show a committed fund balance and don't have a restricted fund balance. So that total is $10,415,059. What we did for FY 22's presentation is we took capital project balances, those balances in the capital fund, so that you didn't see an overwhelmingly large total fund balance. So the following page shows you what those capital projects are. A lot of them are paving projects, the Snows Mill, Grace Church, roundabout acquisition, and construction of the spring building, Rounds Bridge Road, Marquette, Bishop Marks Parkway, 53 at Union Church Road, Hog Mountain Pass Design and Construction. You can see we also brought some of those FY 22 items over to reserve those funds. So we have the FY 22 vehicles that we're still anticipating receiving, as well as the FY 22 paving that we are still working on. And there's some other items.
Can I ask you something,
Yes,
since we were talking about that? Have you by chance seen a $32 million slush fund that we're holding?
no, sir.
No auditors seen,
No auditors have seen.
no slush funds?
No slush funds, no, sir. We do have the safety fund balance, so we try to keep that between 25 and 30%. And essentially, that's 3 months worth of emergency funds, if we should need those.
Thank you.
Also, rainy day fund, I think, is a term that we've used to describe those safety funds.
Just FYI, paving's completed, it just has, they haven't had final payment in it, so I think.
Okay, I probably haven't gotten. that
Right.
Yet. Okay, so that's kind of where we end FY 22. I don't anticipate substantial changes to those numbers at this point in our audit, but we will have final auditors adjustment entries, so they could change slightly. 23 first quarter update, I feel like is a strong update. So we'll look at the general fund, capital, sales tax revenues, and our enterprise fund. The first quarter revenues have come in at 8.72% collected, which is where I would anticipate they would come in at. Everything is collected as expected. We just have tax revenues that typically come in the second quarter. So when we look at the second quarter update, you'll see that those revenues are collected beyond maybe the 25% or 50% that we would see if we were to look at a quarter on a flat basis. And the expenditures are listed. I missed the slide. Revenues, you can see them here by source, taxes, charges for services, etc. So you can see the different collection percentages by the source of revenue as well. So those taxes, again, real estate taxes and insurance taxes typically come in second quarter mostly, as well as our intergovernmental category. That's our element grant, which is also typically in the second quarter. Expenditures, we have a $41.8 million budget, so that is different than the revenue budget and also increased from our original budget passing. That is due to those projects with a lifetime budget rolling into the new fiscal year. So that budget again contains some of those larger dollar amounts and don't necessarily reflect the operating. So at 14.63% spent. You can see those details on the following pages by department. It's a little bit clear to see there. You can see how much each department is spent, and that's more of an operational view. Some of them, so I look for kind of 25% rate, 25% through the year, so 25 of the budget being spent. The ones that are over that I've looked into do have annual costs that are paid at the beginning of the year. So that kind of levels out throughout the year. If there's any questions on specific departments or expenditures, I can answer this shortly as well. Now looking into our capital FY 22 costs, we have the 22 capital coming over. So we have already received the hydraulic trailer that was ordered from prior year's budget. And we anticipate IT hardware upgrades. Those purchases are currently in review, as well as parks and recreation equipment budgeted at $20,000. And those purchases are also in review at this time. And that continues on with vehicles. So the vehicles from prior year, we have received 2 of them and still have 1 of the dump trucks pending. And then our new list of FY 23 vehicles have been ordered, but at this time we don't know an expected date of arrival on those. Boston SPOS distributions are local option sales taxes. We've collected 26% of what we have budgeted for. On your handout, I think the budget's a little bit hard to see. So the FY 23 budget for local option sales tax is $8,750,000. And we have collected 2.3 million in the first 3 months. It's an increase of 11.5% over the prior year. And for SPOS, it's the same increase, approximately 11.5% over prior year, collections of 2.6 million. And that annual budget number is 6,236,602. And that's budgeted off of what we anticipate spending in SPOS, and what we need to collect to move forward with those projects. Projects are listed for you as well. Following the page, these are SPOS 2015 projects as well as our SPOS 2021 projects. We do not have any 04 or 09 SPOS funds any longer. So we have a courthouse HVAC upgrade that is still in process, the transportation plan and water sewer plans, fire equipment, law enforcement vehicles, historic property improvements, economic development, fire rescue vehicle, an HVAC system replacement at ODP, and farmland protection. You can see the status of all of those listed as well. Water Resources is right at 25% collected for their revenue in first quarter, $4 million. And they're at 6.5% expended. And again, they do have that large $25 million Calls Creek project budgeted for them. So that's withdrawn, and we look at their operations. Sewer is at 16.9% spent, and water is at 19.5% spent. So they are on track as well. Their projects are listed as well for capital. Their capital projects are budgeted within their enterprise fund as opposed to separated like we have in the county funds. So Calls Creek plant upgrade, approximately 25 million in process. Meadow Spring sewer extension, Daniels Bridge force main. They did have to replace a mower, and they are planning to purchase 2 additional vehicles for their replacement program as well. And that kind of concludes the where we were and where we are at now. So just looking at a couple of special interest items. The ARPA funds, we did receive 7.8 million. Finished collecting that in FY22. And in FY22, we recognized 3 million of that in revenue. And that $3 million recognized is in support of the broadband project. So we have spent some of that project and have 2.3 million remaining available. And it's also allowable to be used towards the Calls Creek plant upgrade, which would leave a balance of 4.8 million of funds available for that as well. The capital funding strategies for some of the projects that we've discussed today. Hard Labor Creek, Bear Creek, and Calls Creek, all related to water resources. Hard Labor Creek, as Adam mentioned earlier, is approximately $12 million. And I believe I've got state grants listed under that one and Bear Creek. He mentioned that the ARP funding possibility was specifically for Bear Creek. So we're exploring long-term financing options for Hard Labor Creek and Bear Creek as well, in case those fundings aren't available. But if they are, that would be great. And then we've already decided Calls Creek's funding source. Upon approval of the GFL, and we'll be able to move forward. So I believe that will use the SPOS 2015 funds that we have remaining for water resources. They're also looking at using capacity fees they've collected and reserved towards the project, as well as the GFL loan. And then there's the phase 3 of Calls Creek, which would have a remaining balance available from the GFL loan. And also this ARP fund that we looked at could be available to that project as well. and not specifically allocated to these. They do have a referendum item in the SPOS 2021 as well. In the LAS conversion site, phase one of that, we do have restricted capital set aside from that in our capital fund of $2 million. Still SPOS referendum line available in the 2021 SPOS. Chairman mentioned perhaps some of those property sales. Those surplus property sales could go towards funding the project, as well as possible long-term financing if additional funds are used for that project. Great, and so just for reference, I'm giving you the SPOS 2021 allocations by referendum line item. So this is assuming an 85% collection rate. We hope that that is conservative and that we're able to collect the funds listed here, and then they can be used for projects in those respective areas. That concludes the presentation that I have for you, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, remind me again, the discrepancy on the sales side between Lost and SPOS as far as the monthly collection, is it, we just don't share it?
SPOS, we receive the entire distribution and then we distribute to the municipalities. On local option, we only receive our portion.
Okay. So that 902 is including the cities. I mean, for September FY23, that includes the cities part.
Special.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So talking about a bunch of money to spend this morning, just on the LAS conversion itself. So let's mention, we got $2 million set aside in our capital fund now. We also, for broadband, we passed SPOS originally, we were planning to pay for that out of SPOS funds. And so we were fortunate enough to receive that $3 million from the state. So that 5.1 million that's sitting there with broadband, once that project's complete, we have the potential to shift that over to another category here on this list, which could possibly be phase one of the LAS. Or if anything else popped up, emergency wise, we can reallocate once that project is deemed complete.
You talking about LAS Park?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. You would need to come up with a name for it. So.
Yeah.
No.
It's named after you.
No, not me. No, I won't put me a statue in one of the roundabouts. So. Yeah.
We decorated.
So that we're sitting in a really good spot, especially if we can, if the 3 million from the ARPA funds can fund the entire broadband project. We're looking at 2 or 3 years to move to the LAS.
We need a little bit of that broadband loss for a couple of spine projects, connecting some facilities, not nearly that much though. We do have to spend some of it down, but if things proceed like we hope to, we should be able to declare it complete after running a couple of trunk lines and connect facilities. And then, you know, as the chairman said, we can shift it to different categories.
You have a timeline on that?
Yes. So the last timeline we got, you talking about broadband? December, they're supposed to have shovel in the ground at Farmington where they're starting and going out from there. They say that portion is supposed to be complete by February, based on that information. Overall, it should be about a year build for them to hit everything else. But we're meeting with our representative in about a week and a half to get more clarity on that. That's the last we've heard.
closer every day. Well, I don't think for lack of trying, it just turned out to be more complicated than they thought. Because there were some areas that were showing served that really weren't, so they really went out and basically walked every address nearly verifying. Because there were some areas showing as served on the DCA map, and they went out and checked, showed it. And the whole, there's, I think, working on permits now for some of that stuff. Those always take a little while.
So the incentive that we had initially, is that still in place?
They're not gonna make it.
So that goes away.
We're also probably adding some addresses we weren't expecting to, so that's probably gonna work out. Wash out.
The original discussion was 50 megabytes and under, and we're gonna expand, we've gotten that, and we're expanded to 100 megabytes and under, because you really need to go up to 100 megabytes at least at this point. So it'll add more addresses, but we still think we can fit it within the budgeted amount.
But the intent was to give access.
Yes, that is correct.
So at the end of this year, the only thing left in SPOS 15 will be historic and scenic facilities. Do you have a plan for those? Do we have anything on?
We have a couple ideas that we've been working on, but I mean, we still have kind of the plans for the different historic buildings. Obviously, there's some things at Eagle Tavern that need doing, but those are what we got going on. Nothing big for the Heritage Park projects or like that.
And Daniel House needed some work too, I think.
Mostly just demolition of the restroom building.
So that should be able to go under that
Mhm.
and not out of your other one. Any other questions?
So we'll have the audit at our December meeting.
The audit is typically complete before the year-end requirement of December 31st. Our auditors will come in and present to you the results, the numbers, and give you the presentation or overview. But yes, I expect, unless they just can't come until after December 1st to give the presentation, it will be submitted and available prior to.
A lot of times we end up canceling that December work session meeting, depending on the amount of stuff we got going on, so it probably will be January.
And that audit's online too,
I publish it on the website.
so somebody can go to the
Yes, sir.
website and they can find these numbers.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good, thanks. Now we'll move into the homestead. We got Jennifer and Lisa here to help correct anything I say wrong, so just raise your hand if I start something. So I thought we'd just kind of start by talking about the exemptions that we got right now. Our general homestead exemption is $2,000 for the main residence, and then we have 3 that are targeted for folks 65 and over. The first one is if your income does not exceed your gross household income does not exceed $49,820. Then you don't pay any taxes, right, Jennifer? You get a
You don't pay county or school on the house value and the land value up to 5 acres. And that 49 number, it gets adjusted each year by the Social Security code. This year it was 52 something.
Very good. So that's adjusted. And then the next one is if you're 65 and older and your income does not exceed 15,000, then you get a $15,000 homestead.
And that's net income.
net.
We don't count social security retirement up to 80,000.
And then you have the final one, which is if you're 65 and over, you can freeze your property values at the date you turn, or the year after, January 1st after you turn 65. Some of the problems with, go ahead.
That's also on the house value and the land value up to 5 acres, the freeze.
So part of the issues with these is, first of all, you gotta know about them, you gotta come in and apply for them.
And there is
then-
a statement on the tax bill that says people may qualify, but people don't read that.
And then they have to bring all their paperwork in, they have to sit down and talk with Lisa and Jennifer. Probably have to come back 2 or 3 times, sometimes to get the right stuff. And they're spending a lot of time and effort trying to manage that process. So, commission chairman, vice chairman, tax commissioner, office representatives, Representative Houston Gaines and Marcus Wiedauer, along with Justin and I sat down and just kind of, Jennifer walked us through this and the process. And then we kind of just reviewed some ideas on what changes could be made to the process. So there's general consensus on the changes after that meeting were to increase the general homestead from the 2,000 to another amount. Do an automatic freeze at age 65. So now the tax commissioner's office now has the data so they can track birth dates. And when you turn 65 at next January, you would automatically get your property tax frozen at that previous year rate. We talked about sunsetting the exemptions that are related to income. So if you qualify, if you're on the exemption program, you would stay on it until whatever disqualifying event occurred to take you off. And then also looking at an additional automatic additional exemption at age 75. So after that meeting, Jennifer, we asked Jennifer to get all the information. Y'all got the spreadsheet that she produced to try to figure out what this was gonna kind of look like in dollar amounts. After that, the chairman of the commission, vice chairman of the commission, along with the board of education chair and board of education member, the county administrator and the superintendent sat down and we recapped that meeting just like I'm doing with you now. Just let them know we're fixing to have some public discussion on homestead exemptions and how that might affect them. So we got the data, we shared that out. So the process to do any kind of changes for homestead exemptions would be, we'd have to go to the General Assembly. We have to request our delegation to put in local legislation. That would have to go to a referendum to the voting citizens. And then that homestead will become effective the next January 1st after the election. So the quickest anything could happen, if we're ready to go for this next General Assembly session, they can do the local legislation, which means a referendum could occur in 2024. And the changes will become effective January 1st, 2025. I took the data and kind of went through and dug a little deeper into some of the numbers that are coming out. So here's the recommendation I'm throwing out and kind of see where everybody thinks we need to go. I do think we need to sunset the exemptions related to income. So no new entries would start after January 1, 2025. If you're in the program, you would stay in the program until the disqualifying event. The unknown here is how quick those exemptions would fall off. It's really hard to tell the data. We don't have the data to know how quickly, but if you just look at lifespan, I think Oconee's lifespan is generally 81, which is higher than the 77 nationwide. So you're talking up to 16 years it would take for that exemption to fall off totally. So any changes we make immediately will still be funding that, and it would just reduce over time. I think we should move forward with the 65 assessment freeze automatically. There's anywhere from 2,300 to 2,400 house or exemptions out there that could be.
I have a question on that.
Yep.
Is that gonna be the house of five, or would it be
House of
frozen
five.
assessment? House of five?
Same way y'all doing it now. I think that's a fair way to.
Question about that.
Okay.
Let's just say that your house is on 40 acres. So how are you gonna assess that? Are you gonna,
The assessment continues to increase and be assessed at the normal way. You just get an exemption amount that's equivalent to the house value of 5 acres of land value. It's
Okay.
frozen.
would that be a 5 acre lot value? As opposed to
No.
5 acres in that area that you're in?
5 acres of land value equivalent. What it does, it being the system, what the system does is take the per acre value and multiplies it times 5 for that specific parcel, not for the acreage value in the area, or it looks at that specific parcel.
So if the parcel was under conservation use, would that have an effect on it as well?
It's looked at, but the exemption, we have to figure the value. Correct me, Lisa. We have to figure the value for that 5 acres at not the conservation use value to get that homestead value, because conservation use is applied separately.
So I guess what I'm getting at is if you're calculating it that way, with the exemption be a lot more because you're calculating it based on the non-conservation. As
We
opposed
figure
to-
it out to where it's equivalent to, they're not getting double exemption.
Okay,
We do have to visit those individually each year too.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of them, maybe 200, something like that. Of the MCs or LFs with the CEV that we do look at. And the MC is the one that's the gross household. And the LF is the priest.
Yeah, but just a question if true, Mark, on those that are in a current program, and we're talking about sunsetting them, is there any chance for something we're going to do that's new would be a better program than what they're in? Do they have any reason to switch?
Possibly if they are an L1 or L4, which is the 15,000 exemption. If we set up a freeze, like an automatic freeze, we are seeing a lot of people move from the L1, L4 exemption to the freeze just because of what values are doing.
So there's nothing to prevent them from switching the program?
There is not.
Okay, but they'd have to come in and ask to be changed.
Under current circumstances, they do have to request that change.
Actually, that's one of my suggestions is that we do away with the $15,000 one. Because on average, if you're in the tax freeze for this last data, you're getting basically $33,000 homestead versus the 15. So
We have a lot of people coming in and switching over because of what values they're doing. They're getting more exemption value in 1 year because the values are going up so much rather than having that 15,000 exemption.
But they'd have to come in to switch over? I
well,
mean,
not what I
Under current circumstances.
what I would suggest is that we make it happen automatically with passage of what's on January 1st. L1, L4 disappears and they convert over to the LF. I'm talking Lingo now.
L1 and L1?
L1, L4 will disappear. They'll be converted over to the LF.
LF, okay.
So that would basically double their homestead exemption based on the data that we have from the spreadsheet.
But there's other programs that may be more lucrative for our citizens. They can, as John said, they'll stay in those.
They'll stay in those until they
Disqualified.
disqualify.
Okay.
So right now, you could have anywhere up to 700 people who are not taking advantage of even their property tax freeze that automatically get it at that point. Let's see. So L1, L4 go away, replaced with the automatic property tax freeze. We're looking at an additional take our general exemption from 2,000 to 5,000 for all. 150% increase on the 2 to 5. And then, at age 75, do an automatic additional 10,000. So the one thing we can't calculate is how quickly the income-related exemptions are going to fall off. So what I'd suggest is that if we hit the 2025 date, that we also in 2035 in January add an additional $10,000 or take the general exemption to 10,000. And so that would give us time to absorb, allow those exemptions to fall off, and then we can just pass it on the overall general.
So would that be part of the legislative?
If we can do it, I don't know if we can do that, but that would be the ask. And if not, then whoever's sitting here in 10 years, we just have to go back and take it up.
It's a question that if, of course, the school board was represented at that second meeting, if they wanted to do more as it pertains to their tax, can they do that?
Yes. And so the changes we're making here will affect their tax revenue. But they can make any other changes they want to affect just the school tax.
So if they want to be a little more forgiving to
Yes.
older people, they could do that? Could they do it within the same legislative action, or is that a separate?
I believe we could work it all together. Okay. As long as they're on the same time frame.
But I think, I don't hear too many people complaining about county M&O. I think that, it's the old saying, and I don't have kids in the school anymore, and I'm 80 years old, and why am I paying? But we used to not hear that, but we're hearing a lot more of it now. And, but I think that's why my question is, that's really a school board decision.
Yes.
But we really just can't summarily cut their revenues.
I wouldn't want to be part of
If,
that.
if they want to do more, they can.
Right. And so that's
Okay.
totally their decision. They've received the same data that we've gotten, so I'm sure they're over there calculating what everything would cost in there. And then we'll send a summary over to them as well. If everybody's got consensus on how we're moving forward here. And we'll go ahead and start having, after next week's, or week after next is done, we'll try to give it to delegations, get the ball rolling.
What if they don't want to do it?
We'll go ahead and talk to them, make sure they were interested in participating. You talking about the delegation?
No, I'm talking about school board.
Well, this is gonna affect them. They go, if citizens vote for this, this will be what they have to live with on this part.
But this is driven by board of commission, what you're talking
Yes.
here.
But it will affect them.
That's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
though, it affects, I'm just curious if they're on board with it.
I don't want to speak for anybody. There were no red flags waving during our discussion. I don't know. Like I said, we'll go back and have another conversation about, after we look at it, here's what we think we need to do.
I don't have a problem
Yeah.
going on, I'm just curious.
Now, the age 75, that automatic increase, that's an additional $10,000 that be reduced off the 40% assessed value.
Yes, the homes ever go up another 10,000.
So it would come off the assessed value. Okay.
I got a question though. Some of us, it's getting closer. That, what if, I'll just use me, I get 75, but I can't stay by myself and I gotta move, I still have my house. How is it, that person gotta be living at that location?
If you're in a facility, you can keep homestead exemption, right?
Right.
So if they ship me off, my kids don't want me or anything like that? they
As
ship
long
me?
as the home's not being rented.
Okay, so if it changes the occupant,
That would be considered a disqualifying event.
okay.
Does the title have to still remain in the old person's name,
Yes.
Jackson's name?
But even if it does, it turns rental, you would still lose the additional.
Right.
Right.
So it's about the use of.
Okay.
How about in the case, I know you would have scenario this to death, but let's say that your assets were in a trust and the trust is actually the owner of the property, given his scenario again, even though he's living there.
As long as you're listed as trustee or beneficiary, you can still obtain that exemption.
I've got a question, may not have anything to do with this, but it's still posted. Am I correct that there may be some homeowners who, I guess how they show their income, they own the house, but they don't show any income, so they don't really pay any property tax.
If they qualify, if they can bring in an income tax return that shows their gross household income is less than 52, then they don't pay county or school tax on their house value and 5 acres of land value. So if someone knows how to work the system, the federal income tax system, they can get an exemption where they're not paying any tax at all.
Yeah.
And we have a handful of those.
Sure.
That we know of. The other thing is those that we don't know of. Because the exemption that's in place right now is gross household income.
Yeah.
So some is the situation, like you said, mom and dad are getting older and they need somebody to live with them. Well, come to find out, there's the kids and their kids are living there and that just bumps them out of being eligible for that exemption.
But with this, that wouldn't happen.
Right, because there's no income limit.
Right?
I have a question for y'all, or for John. Implementing the at 65 the freeze and transitioning those L1, L4s over to that, would you go back and freeze it at the value when they qualified, or the value?
That would be my guess. We'd have to kind of talk through that on how it's gonna be best to implement from your end. So we gotta figure that out.
John, can you talk real money as far as what the real money is on this? I mean, 15,000, I know that's just an assessment value that they're gonna reduce. But I'm just curious about say a $500,000 house, for paying what now, what would they be paying later with the new assessments stuff like that? I mean, if it's based on a $500,000 house, like for example, I use my home exemption is like $50. With this new, is this gonna change the tax? What is it gonna change for the citizens, what I'm asking? Because the 15,000, they're not gonna really, they're gonna know that their assessment's reduced, but how much money is it gonna reduce, I guess?
Yeah. I don't have it by home like that. We can get that together.
Because that's what they're gonna wanna know when they talk to me about it. They wanna know how much money they're gonna be saving. They're not gonna understand the 15
It's gonna depend on the value.
of the home. I
Of the
knew,
home.
I knew the value of the
Yeah.
home mattered, but if we had an estimate
But
of
for
where one
instance,
is.
the 15,000 right now saves about $350. That just gives you kind of an idea, like your regular homestead's about 50, slower this year because the millage rate's lower, but it's about 50, about 350.
Okay.
So you start just multiplying that out, and we're seeing $30,000 to $50,000 differences from base year value to current year value.
Okay, that's important.
I'm getting confused now. That's my trouble. But if we increase it from 2,000 to 5,000 general exemption, they'd say going from saving $20, $50 per meal.
What's the dollar amount you're assigning to the 2,000 right now? Is it $50 or?
Roughly 50, it's actually about 42 something this year.
Okay, so 42 times 150% would be what it is. So 100.
That on the, if we go, they automatically increase by 10,000. So we'd be saving 100, per meal.
Yeah, so if you're gonna get another, you turn 75, you'll get another $150. So 42 times 150%.
Per meal, or just all over?
Total.
Total,
Yeah.
okay.
Because depending on the,
I got too many numbers running through my head.
if your discount now is $42, you go to $63. From going from 2,000 to 5,000. And then when you hit 75, you would get another $63 total extra, so it'll be $126. I'm catching on that.
You in the ballpark.
Okay. And that's total school and that's everybody's taxes together. So our portion to eat of that would be roughly 20% 30%.
Was there any appetite to have a even more aggressive category for someone much older than 75, John?
I didn't really, with the average expectancy, I didn't see that many folks would benefit from going another. If 81 is the life expectancy for Oconee, I don't know, it would be beneficial to a lot of folks, but it's definitely something we could look at. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Something to consider, and Lisa and I were talking about this morning, and I know change comes. But there are people right now that are counting on when they turn 65, being below that income limit and not having to pay county school tax. I mean, I know you're going to get some kickback, but if it changes, anticipate, wow, I just turned 65, I don't qualify anymore. You know,
Yeah, that's gonna, that there is a small handful of folks that will probably not have as big a benefit. But again, I mean, the amount of time that y'all are spending on trying to keep this up and then just the challenges that you're dealing with.
I am completely in favor of nothing income based.
Yes, because it is, I mean, what do you say, a couple, 250 a year? And
Roughly,
then
yes,
every one of them have to come in and sit down and you have to go through.
in a 3-month period.
Yeah.
And pretty much Lisa and I are the only ones that do that.
But Jim, the people who talk about the looking forward to that time, I mean, they can still do that if they turn 65.
Between now and 2025. It's those that are 60 now, 62, that know about it and are anticipating getting there. And then it's not gonna be there. But, I mean, change happens. That's understandable.
Which is part of the reason for trying to do the general exemption up and then hitting it again.
But I'm on the other end because I feel like there's a place for that exemption for the elderly where, especially in a situation where you lose a spouse and the income has changed drastically. And you're getting that exemption based on a low income. So that would totally go away. And what you're saving with 10,000 would be about $250 on top of a freeze at 75.
Yep. No perfect answer for sure.
So that, what's the category that fits into that? level one?
The MC.
They, oh, MC, okay. So we got 641 currently in that program. But that would stay though.
Yeah, she's not, they're talking about new.
New, okay. I
People
didn't
that are
want to make
anticipating being able to
641 people
qualify for
mad.
that.
Right, so they would be grandfathered in, but there would be no new ones after 2025.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to qualify.
That's only, you don't have to qualify one time for the county exemptions, right?
Right.
You don't
correct.
check that every year.
We don't. We don't have manpower, and the way the law's written, once you're qualified, you don't have to go back.
So as far as like somebody that had a larger estate, more than 5 acres, then they're still gonna be responsible for all the taxes beyond that. So you can't really say that, you won't not be responsible for taxes
Right.
at 65 or 75 if you've got a larger than 5 acre estate.
And I'll admit too, that a lot of people that are qualified for the MC exemption, it's $500,000 house. I mean, so you got somebody that's got a gross household income less than 52,000, but they're living in a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 house. They planned well, whatever, so when you look at it, it doesn't look right for somebody to, but then on this side, when you got an elderly person that's not making a lot of money, they want that exemption where they don't have to pay a bunch of school tax. And like you said earlier, we did that, we hear that also, it's the school tax. I don't have any kids in school.
Well, that's the largest amount.
Right, yeah.
When I was on school board, I heard it, and I'm sure my colleagues here heard it too. But I think there's, no matter what you do, there's gonna be somebody that knows how to work the system, or they've got good accountants and all stuff like that, and they find all the kind of loopholes. And I guess it's your conscience.
Yeah.
I got 2 grandkids out, and I really, I look at it is, there was always somebody that was through raising children that helped pay for my 2 coming through.
Amory, it's like you said, we used to not hear this a whole lot. I mean, it wasn't the whole, I don't have kids in school, I don't pay school tax. I don't have kids in school either. My kids are out of school. All the commercial properties, they don't pay, they don't have kids in school, but they pay school tax. It's just the way that the Constitution of Georgia is set up to fund the school system, but also it draws a certain demographic to your area. Having a good school system means a good community.
I don't argue with it.
Yeah, that's what I have to try to explain without coming out and saying.
Yeah, I always use this too. I said, I don't have, that I know of, I don't have anybody in the prison system. But
There you
or the
go.
jail, but I'm, part of my tax money is going there.
I have to use that one.
Yeah.
Or your house is
I
not
don't
on
think I
fire.
can.
Or your house is not on fire.
I said, I don't know if I got some, I've had some that passed through, but I don't know if I got any there now, but I do think it's I will say this, I have a lot of sympathy. Cause I remember my grandmother, all she had was Social Security. She worked like a dog till she couldn't do it anymore. And, she paid, of course, as she got older, she had 3 daughters that also helped her. But I am sympathetic to the elderly that never did anything wrong all their life.
they did what they were supposed to do. They worked, maybe they didn't, make a great deal of money, but I do have sympathy for them. Unlike somebody living in a really nice house, but they got some really good accountants and lawyers, and they know how to play the system. I have less sympathy for them, but those folks who all they have is what
Yeah.
Uncle Sam gives them in that monthly check.
And
But I
that's
don't
what
know
we're
that-
hearing too now. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No, that's all
we're hearing people are staying. I don't think this is actually happening. I haven't actually heard of an instance. They're like, I can't afford to live here anymore. But it's those people that have lived here for 70 years. And, because values are going up. It's not your millage rate. Your millage rates are low. We got one of the lowest millage rates in the region, not the state. It's the values, because everybody wants to live here. It's basic economics.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's why I say, I think with a lot of the talk about school taxes, there's been some things that have happened that cause it to be more of a topic than what it might have been 25 years ago.
yeah.
And that's not for us to really deal with, but,
All right, so to kind of summarize, we're talking about sunset and income related exemptions on the automatic freeze of assessments at age 65. Transferring the $15,000 exemption to an automatic freeze. Doing an additional 10,000 at age 75. Doing a January 1st of 2025 general exemption from 2,000 to 5,000. And if possible, in the same legislation, have it go to 10,000 in 2035. Any major objections there? We still got a lot to work out in detail, so we'll get back with Jennifer, make sure we can do everything we think we can do from sitting up here.
And Houston and Marcus are on board as far as presenting the legislation, right?
Yes, absolutely. So we'll probably try to get everybody, like I said, after the election, we'll try to get you back up. And then y'all can research and make sure you can, how hard is this gonna be to finagle on your end?
Do we need to follow back up with the school board?
yes. Let me ask you a question, I don't know there'd be a lot of people, but there might be some. What if, okay, you got somebody there, they don't have a problem paying the tax bill, but they're given a break. But they want to come back and say, I'll pay the difference back.
I can probably count on one hand those that have, I've had some people say that about qualifying for a senior exemption, and they would have qualified for the house and five, almost no tax. And I think she was a previous teacher, one I'm particularly thinking of. She's like, well, I don't want to take away from school tax. But I see what you're saying. So.
Would there be a mechanism for those to say, okay, you got this break, whatever it was, if they wanted to write an additional check, they could do that?
We would just remove the exemption from the property record card. They would just pay the full tax.
Because I think there would, I'm not saying they're gonna be breaking your door down, but I think there might be some.
Less than a handful over the whole.
Well, there's gonna be some people who have, strong beliefs about that.
Yeah. We'll probably get them to sign an affidavit or something stating that they had rather pay full tax and not qualify for the exemption. So, we can handle that.
Anything else on homesteads? Any other business? Mr. Saxon. Motion adjourned. Second. Adjourned.